I'm the Night Sky Prince, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. Say hello, Philip.
What's going on, everybody? It's a pleasure to be here.
Philip does a lot of things. He has you're a filmmaker, film producer? Am I mistaken? Am I mixing it up or?
Filmmaker, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, filmmaker and martial artist, and also a Final Fantasy fan. He's just so many things combined into one person. It's crazy. Chat says we got some handsome man talking about some awesome games. Awesome.
You guys are too kind. No, it's great to be here. Yeah. I do a few things. As I was saying, if you guys like Tifa fights or anything like that, I do similar martial arts. I lived as a warrior monk in the Shaolin Temple. I just released my documentary about that on my main YouTube channel, and then I eventually just started a second one because I just wanted to talk about filmmaking and Final Fantasy and stuff. So
right.
I started a second channel just to talk about it and meet cool people like Night Sky Prince.
Awesome. I'm glad to meet you too. I remember the way I got introduced to your content was actually through Remake and through some of 14 cinematics and watching you react to them. Yeah, and I would see like this, like I was like, oh, filmmaker reacts to such and such and such, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, I wonder what an actual someone who actually works on films like actually thinks about this. So
thank you, man. Yeah, I really try to bring that different angle than just like, whoa, this is cool. I really try to like open up the science a little bit, and because the thing is, I got inspired by Final Fantasy as a kid to pursue filmmaking and storytelling. So it's so cool to come full circle and just like also like give back to the community by providing that insight and enthusiasm. I just love it. I could talk about it till the cows come home, you know?
Yeah. Something interesting someone actually pointed out to me was that in a lot of ways, Final Fantasy VII Original was really like the first AAA game, or like what we think of as AAA games now. Yeah. Because of the way that it did all those cinematic things back then with the pre-rendered movies and things like that, and even the fact that the budget was that large, because it was the largest video game budget of all time when it started.
Hundreds of crew members, and that was insane.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so a lot of people in like sort of like the video game historian type field, they kind of consider it like the first AAA game. And,
that makes a lot of sense. I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah, and like when you think about it, yeah, because even when you think back, it's sort of like, man, I can't even think of any video game around that time that had that level of budget or production values.
Oh, no.
There's nothing else, right?
And I talk about it all the time where it was the first one to like tell a novel type story, FF7. Because if you look at FF6, incredible story, obviously we all love it, but it's so small. Like I just replayed FF6 recently on my channel, and it's like, again, not small or anything like that or shallow, but it's just that somebody did like the data on the amount of dialogue in 6, and it's such a small percentage of what it is in 7. So really? It's just the time that they take to treat the characters as human, as opposed to 6 is astronomical. Whereas it's supposed to be like an opera. It's supposed to be kind of these like almost like caricature, mythological figures in 6, and that's what I like about it. But they just went so deep, and they started making movies pretty much. It's
awesome. I guess it's a good segue for the first topic here that I wanted to talk about. From the perspective of a filmmaker, what do you feel like is Final Fantasy's strongest, or like, let me rephrase that, I tripped over my tongue. Which Final Fantasy do you feel like has the strongest storytelling as a filmmaker?
Oh man, I talk about this all the time. So for me, it's probably 10, believe it or not. And most people like 10. But for me, it's and it sometimes surprises people that I say it. The narrative structure of 10 is so clean. It's so concise. It's actually a lot cleaner than 7.
I agree.
7 really thrives. Yeah. And 7 really thrives because of the characters, right? The characters are just so larger than life. You can relate to them. You can understand them. So that's its main advantage. But 10 is just because it functions like a film, the story. It's every single scene is just driving forward the narrative like so completely. And you'll notice there's no like kind of side quest segments where they'll cover character stuff. It's just on the main quest, right?
Yeah.
So I always talk about Waka, who's like has insane character growth throughout that game, right? I mean, he's a freaking racist at the beginning. Like, right against the Al Bhed. So like in the beginning of the game, he's just, you know, this and that. But notice there's not like a side segment where he's like, oh, what, the Al Bhed? I guess I like them now. I mean, it's happening mid-scene as we're about to get the big uni reveal, as we're driving forward the plot, and, you know, physically in the travelogue part of the narrative, right? They're like moving towards the end. It's just, it all happens at the same time. The planning and the writing of as the structure of that game is so good. I mean, not even to mention the characters, the dialogue, the emotions of it as a tragedy. It's just, is mind blowing. 10. So that's probably my top pick.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you agree?
No, actually, I completely agree. I think 10 probably has the most well-told story in the whole franchise. And man, you really don't get a more perfectly paced game than that either. Like, like as many times as I played Final Fantasy X, could play that game over and over and over again. Because as linear as it is, it never feels like you're in a place where you don't want to be. Because there's not a single area. Yeah, it's like watching your favorite movie. Because there's not a single place in that game that really overstays its welcome. Aside from maybe some of the trials, the Clister trials, which I guess
there's that one in Bamel, which like they just got a little too ambitious. I talk about this a lot. Like they would have had a better advantage if they had like a Zelda system where you could look around, for example, because you can't move the camera, you can't grasp like the scale of this. But like, where am I? What's going on? I'm just on these weird tracks. But I mean, at least they tried, you know. I think all the other ones are really good, the Clisters.
Yeah, they're not bad though. They're just really simple puzzles that kind of give you some sort of gameplay variety to break up.
And I miss puzzles in Final Fantasy. I wish they'd bring them back because it's just good variety.
Yeah. Since you enjoy like the or I wouldn't say, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I wouldn't say that you enjoy the linear style, but actually, let me ask you that first. Do you enjoy the more linear, almost film style approach, opposed to something more open world style? Yeah,
absolutely. Now,
yeah,
that doesn't mean I don't think they can work perfectly together.
Okay.
But for example, Final Fantasy 15, which do we even call it open world? Kinda. Yeah. It doesn't function as well as 10, right? It's like they sacrificed a lot of the budget, I feel, to try and make the world explorable, and there's almost no cohesive like travel like it should be. It's literally a road trip, but it kind of falls apart because it's so short. It's like, yeah, we go to this one place, we fight Titan, fight a big lizard guy who's really rude, and then it's the end of the game. I
totally thought 15 actually should have, if anything, if I could go back in time and like suggest something to the developers, I would have made 13 open world and I would have made 15 linear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. 13 is, you know,
yeah.
A lot of people talk about 13 linearity, and it's funny because you'll notice a lot of people say, "Oh, 13, man, it's because it's linear, it's bad." It's really not. 10 is so much more linear than 13, and it's 10 times better. It's because it's a good story.
Yeah,
like you have to care about the characters in 13. It's not that they're bad characters; it's just very oddly. It's the opposite of 10. It's got like one of the worst structures narratively. It's just all kinds of confusing. Like what's all these terms? Let's see, falsi, pulse, falsi. Let's see. It's all very confusing.
One of the things that I talk about too with 13, when I sort of criticize its execution of linearity, is the actual structure of the environments. And I never hear too many people talk about this too often. But Final Fantasy X, no matter where you are, each location is like one screen, maybe two screens. It's very small. Now, you can make an argument that that's limitation of PlayStation 2, whatever. Even though Final Fantasy 12 later on ended up having much bigger environments. But the world in Final Fantasy X, every place that you go to is like one or two screens big.
Yes.
And that's it. And when I was replaying Final Fantasy 13 recently, because I was working on a modding video, and I realized, like, oh man, every single place that you're at in this game feels like a dungeon. So you'll be, every single place. And the reason it all feels like a dungeon in part is because, you know, it's always that same, you know, straightforward hallway. And you're always going, and those areas stretch for like a long period of time. Each area takes like maybe 2 or 3 hours to get out of.
Yes.
Versus 10, where it's like, okay, you're in this area. You're in Kilika for like 35. it's like nothing, right? You go through Kilika, and then you're in the next area, and then you're in the next area, and it just keeps going at like a very consistent rate. And it's not just so much that the environment or the scenery is constantly changing, it's that the narrative feels like it's constantly progressing. And then
and I think that has to do with world building, to be honest with you. Like 10, again, even if it was longer, you're curious about the world and you're learning about it as you go. 13, it's like it's very ambiguous. Like you just start and like, where am I? I'm on a train track, just like hovering above nothing. Like what is this place? Like you can't picture Cocoon. Like what is it until like halfway through the game? It's like, oh, okay, I guess it's like a big dome thing. It's just very confusing. Whereas 10, it's just set up so well, and you're already caring about this character in 10 minutes. So then you're just on the journey with him, and functioning so well as like the audience is Titus. He doesn't know what's going on in Spirit either, right? So he's able to ask questions, so we learn. It's just very cleverly done. Whereas 13, a little confusing,
So speaking of which, is there any game out there do you feel like strikes a good balance between, say, the open world style and also being incredibly well story driven?
Well, of course, I have to say Breath of the Wild with story and open world, because now they'll never go this extreme with Final Fantasy. Please, I hope they don't, right?
Yeah.
But that's actual open world game, but you can just do whatever you want. You do the story in whatever order you want. Like what? And they, of course, did the memories. Very clever. Very clever. Are you a Zelda fan, Ryan?
Oh man, so I kind of fell off after Skyward Sword, and I didn't play Breath of the Wild, but pretty much everything leading up to Breath of the Wild I have played, and Breath of the Wild is basically the only mainline Zelda I have not played. Ironically,
I'm jealous. I wish I could play it again. it really restored my faith in gaming, and this will be a short, like little sidetrack here, but
no, go ahead.
I realized when I played that game that gaming had become so mathematical. It becomes so like, you just look at your checkbox of quests. It shows you where to go on the map. You run there, you do the thing. You're just doing it like it's a chore. Breath of the Wild brought me back to like Ocarina of Time days, man, where I was running around when I was, a little kid in Ocarina of Time because I was just enjoy, like in imagination, like, oh, what is that? I wonder what's up there. I wonder what that thing is. In Breath of the Wild, I was like, I don't even care if there's a reward for going up there. I just want to go up that hill and roll down it like an idiot because it's fun. I want to like, throw my bomb somewhere. It was just fun.
Right.
So this is what 15 lacked, right? It didn't have that like joy. It was like, it's very, I don't know the word, it's like almost too real of a world. And that's what Zelda made me realize. It's like, dude, this is just fun. It's not always about being hyper realistic. You got to make it so you just want to run around and play in this world like a kid. And I think that's what 15 lacked a little bit. It was a little bit too mechanical,
Right. I think when you touch on like maybe 15 being a little too realistic, I actually really agree. Because one of the things with 15 is that I remember them talking about this too. Like in the trailers, they showed Noctis like double jumping. This was in like this is like E3 2013. They showed Noctis
Don't start
double
me
jump.
about trailers for this.
And they showed him like double jumping, right? And someone asked Tabata if double jumping was still going to be in the game, and double jumping was removed because he said, double jumping is not realistic.
Ugh.
And I'm just like, neither is like teleporting where you throw your sword, bro. But
now there's a big like aquatic mythical dragon destroying a city, but we'll do it. That game, I mean, that's one of the things that really just inspired me to be into storytelling. I mean, the Versus 13 trailers, this is why I love Nomura as a director so much, is the amount of time in those trailers, like a couple minutes, and you get the feeling. There's a tone to those trailers that's so strong. It drove people insane for years. They're like, where's this game? I need Versus 13. It looks so much fun. It looks so dark and interesting. Like, there was nothing like that in Final Fantasy. And in a couple minutes, it's like this weird Hamlet Shakespearean gray area thing. It's like, is Noctis like a good guy? Don't really know. And the tone color of it, the juice was there, and that's just all gone in the game. It's like a skeleton of its former self. And this is an interesting idea that always blows people's minds when I say this. Every Final Fantasy game, for the most part, there's a couple exceptions, starts with a city escape, or like leaving a city. Like we talk about Narsh, Xanarkand, Midgar, obviously, right?
Yeah.
That's what Final Fantasy 15 was doing.
Yeah.
You fight your way out of the city. You fight your way out of Insomnia, and it establishes, just like Midgar, all the main characters, how they know each other, the villains. It's a perfect Act 1. So they took that out, and then you're kind of just there, like pushing a car, like, okay. The game's
yeah, it's a trope that Final Fantasy uses a lot, but it's a really, really good hook. It's one that you can use in different ways, and you can use it every time escaping the city. It works every single time, right?
I mean, it's their device, so why not use it, right? It's their sort of lineage,
right?
And somebody said 8 and 12 are the exceptions. I mean, you could even say Balam Garden is the first town, and Dalmasca is the first thing in 12. You got to kind of find a way out of Dalmasca, right? But he's stuck there. He wants to be a sky pirate under the Empire. Yeah. But yeah, it's just they had it set up, and then for reasons that we won't get into that are very frustrating, it didn't happen. Go watch the movie, which we were talking about before the call.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we were. So I did want to ask you, like, as a filmmaker, what do you feel about the idea of these multimedia projects that Square has tried to do, specifically with 15? They've also done a little bit of this with the compilation of Final Fantasy 7 and Kingdom Hearts. What do you think about these like multimedia projects? Is there a good way to do them? And do you think that there is any good way that Square has done them so far?
The way they've done it has been a hindrance, in my opinion. Now, it actually goes back further than most people think. It goes back to Final Fantasy 13. Believe it or not. And I remember when 13 came out, it was a couple months till it came out, they released a short story online. And it was kind of marketed as this kind of backstory to 13. I was so excited. Popped it up on the computer, read through it. It was probably like 20 pages. And it was the whole backstory of how, I think it was how the kid, what the heck is his name? It starts with a D, Saz's kid. Gets
I do not remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a million years. It's not the most memorable. It's how he gets the mark of the sea, and he gets his focus and everything. And it was incredibly important. And it was about how Sarah gets hers. And
Dodge, that's his name.
It's like Dodge, yeah. A lot of it's off screen. So I was reading this, and I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And then I had this weird fear in the back of my head, like, wait, this is going to be in the game, right? And of course it wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't in the game. So that was the moment where it was like, why would they do that? Like they had the writer who's very good write this scenario and then not use it and then make it into a different media completely. So I think if it's used right, it's used like FF7 Remake seems to be doing it. Sort of this cinematic universe type stuff where it's like they're releasing this fun novella. It looks like Aerith and Tifa backstories, like childhood. So they will be covering that. They already have covered it in the game. We see Tifa's flashback. We see Aerith's being a little girl in the train graveyard. Incredible scenes. But now they're doing like, oh, this is not needed. Like, we don't need every day of their life in the main game, right? But we get this fun stuff where if you're super enthusiastic as a fan, you can dive into it, and it'll be like, it'll give you more emotions for these characters during this story. But it's not like it's not needed to know what's going on. And I think that's the right way to do it. Not go watch the Brotherhood anime. Go watch the movie. Go watch whatever the heck else, and then play the game. Yeah, exactly. It's a little much just because, like, 5 years later now, if someone just says, "Oh, I want to play FF15, that looks fun," they have no idea about that. They just start playing. They're like, what?
Yeah. I remember. I was talking to someone once. Actually, it was like an old manager at like work, and he was in the video games too. And I was talking to him, and he was telling me like, "Oh yeah, I play Final Fantasy 15. Is really enjoying it." And then I was like, "Oh, make sure you watch Kingsglaive if you haven't already." He's like, "There's a movie?"
That's what I'm saying.
Right, for you guys watching, you might be like, "How do you not know?" But you have to understand, for a casual fan,
10 years from now too, like it doesn't say it in the game as far as I know. It's like, oh, see this movie to see this I don't think it does, actually. I could be wrong on that, if they added it in Royal Edition or something. But yeah, it's just so it's not the strongest. But again, 15 is, and this is what I always say, 15 is a great game. It should be like the best Final Fantasy, though. It should rival.
It had the potential. It had the potential to be the best Final Fantasy. I think that's what's so frustrating about it. Even though it's a pretty decent game.
Yeah, and if you go, it's great. Like if you compare it to like some lesser savory JRPG kind of bargain bin titles, which I won't mention. It's a fantastic game, right? With like,
Right.
super anime, just like whatever phoned in, pretty much copying FF10 storyline over and over again. Like it's quite good. The problem is if you watch like the Versus 13 stuff again, it's almost depressing now, but fantastic filmmaking. It's worth a watch. Even if they just put that back in and took out Kingsglaive and made it so, Noctis is there, you meet all the guys, that already makes it like 50% better just by including the opening, because it's the most important part, man. If you play FF7 Remake Part 2 and skip Part 1, that's a horrible experience. You're going to be like, oh, okay. That's pretty much what 15 is.
Right.
Imagine you just play Part 2, which we don't know yet, but it's going to be like, okay, cool. They're searching for this guy, Sephiroth.
Right.
All right, cool. I guess they're friends. Don't know how they know each other. Tifa and Cloud, they're friends. I guess that's what 15 is,
Yeah. You're kind of right. 15 almost feels like it starts at like the second part. It almost feels like it definitely does. In fact,
20 hours. The insomnia.
Oh, hey, Work to Game. Thank you for joining us.
By the way, lots of great people here I see from my community and yours. Like, welcome everybody.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. I was gonna say with Final Fantasy 15, one thing that was really funny is that they also did a short story, just like what you were mentioning with 13. And in this short story, they talk about how Noctis and Nyx actually met. And
we don't see it. We don't see it. Of course.
And I was like, what? And like Nyx like escorted Noctis, like basically he like escorted him like out of the capital like when he was leaving to go on the trip with like the boys, and I'm like,
oh, that would be so cool. Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
And that's the thing, like even just that scene thrown in as a flashback or something, like there's almost no connection besides Luna between the two things. And I think that's the only reason it's bad. Like it could have been very connective and extra connective tissue, but it's just kind of unclear. But again, I think what they were doing is they were thinking the right way for this. And it was they're trying to go for this kind of modern social media. I talked about this on Clark's channel the other day. Like this kind of modern social media, multimedia or cinematic universe feel, which we see with Star Wars and Marvel, right? And look what it's doing. It's driving people insane, waiting for the next episodes. But you see the difference, right? It's I can watch Mandalorian, Star Wars. I don't know if you're into Star Wars, Ryan. Watch Mandalorian and then like go watch this other new show about the Clone Wars, and then watch the Obi-Wan show coming up, and it's a completely separate story that is like narratively sound and is fantastic and is fulfilling, but the two add to each other as a universe,
Right.
And that's kind of what they're doing now with FF7, which I like, is they're tapping into this kind of modern, like getting the fans involved. They want us talking about it. Like they want this conversation to be happening, right? Me and you talking about what are we looking forward to? What scares us about 7 Part 2? What excites us? And it's so clever that they've done that with a game that's done. Like it came out 23 years ago for FF7 Remake. So it's not like, Marvel Cinematic Universe where they're just telling like a cohesive thing from a literary source, a comic source. It's a game that ended, FF7. So it's so interesting to me that they tapped into that.
Yeah. Work to Game actually asks, do you think, like Star Wars, that the FF7 Rs will be able to be played in any order?
Probably, because it depends on how they do it. We don't know too much about Part 2. But I will say why I was instantly excited. I'm probably the only person on Earth, actually. I was instantly excited when they said Part 1 is Midgar only. I was like, yeah! Because it's a perfect Act 1. And I've said this about FF7 since day one. It's such a good Act 1 that it just, like I said about 15, whatever, it introduces all the main characters, how they know each other. So important. So important. Even if, Tifa and Cloud met in childhood, they still, like, we realize that. And then we developed their friendship. We developed the Aerith meeting in there and everything. It's so important. All the villains are established, right? And then it's the Fellowship of the Ring at the end of Part 1. It's, we got to go hunt down this son of a bitch. Let's go. It's a hunt. Let's go get him. And then in Part 2, it's like, okay, we're starting the journey, So I think it probably could be played if they do a similar, job. I'm sure I hate to say it's probably still going to be better than 15.
Yeah.
Even if you just played Part 2, because it's just the characterization, man. And I don't think you disagree with me on that, right?
No. Actually, I really did enjoy 7R more than 15 as a game, if I'm completely honest. And even as a story, even though I disagree with the current direction that they're headed in, I still think that as a story, it's just more compelling because it just felt a little bit more cohesive than what 15 was doing. I guess 15 also kind of spent all this time building it up in my head with all the concepts from the trailers that they had put out, and then when those concepts aren't there and it's something different,
they're gone. Yeah.
Although even in void of that, I feel like there was a lot of what's the way to put it? I think even if you didn't come in at that point, if you came into 15 just raw with like no expectations, you would still feel like something is missing. Like the backstory
compared to FF10, right?
Yeah.
FF10, it's a skeleton of a story compared to FF10. And it's just like the amount of dialogue between the party in FF10 compared to 15. Like, yeah, they talk on the road when you're running around a lot, but that's not the same, man. It's not like meaningful story-driven dialogue. Like every single line is important in 10. That's why it's so good.
So, okay, this takes me into my next topic.
Heck yeah.
As a longtime Final Fantasy fan, what do you think Final Fantasy 16 has to do to really impress you, to really bring back that glory age? Because regardless of how people, a lot of people love Final Fantasy 7 Remake, but at the end of the day, that's a remake. That's still Final Fantasy 7 that they're leaning in on. And Square does have to eventually make new Final Fantasies that are good. New Final Fantasy stories that are just as good as the past. Now, I personally think that they've really done that with Final Fantasy 14. I think that they really have been able to capture that with 14. Shadowbringers in particular is the highest rated Final Fantasy title in 2 decades. It's like a 91 on Metacritic. They haven't seen those scores in a long time. And just the praise for Shadowbringers and its story, and thankfully it is being handled by the same creative business unit as 14, and I really think that they will end up knocking it out of the park. But again, I just want to know, are there any specific things that you want to see 16, let's like laser focus on, really get right? What is your dream 16, man? Tell me. Based on what we know so far.
Yeah, it was what we know. So
yeah,
I think what they need to do for me is I love the whole Ivalice side, and I think 16 is still going to be Ivalice. It's a hot debate.
Really.
I think it's the same artist. It's the same artist. The only question is Sakimoto not on the music, but they can do that. They can do 2 artists or not. But yeah, I think I love that whole aesthetic. I love 12 so much. I think it probably has the best script in Final Fantasy 12. Not necessarily the best narrative structure, but like the dialogue in 12 is like Shakespearean. It's insanely good, right? And it's just, if they go that route, man, which it seems they're doing, and the way you talk to me about Shadowbringers, the way you talk about Endwalker, and from what I've seen in the cinematics, which I love, for those of you who don't know, I've played like 100 or so hours of 14. It's very promising, and there's this kind of cool thing that what they're doing with 14, that team, they are so passionate because, they revived it. It was a dead game, They not only brought it back to life, but made it thrive. So like everything they do, it's almost like they're trying to prove themselves, right? So if they can bring that energy, which I'm sure they are, man. When they got that green light, like, by the way, you get to make a full Final Fantasy, like a non-MMO, whatever you want to call that. They were probably like jumping with joy, man. Can you imagine if they put that much effort into, like patch, what is Shadowbringers, like 5, 6?
We're at patch 5.5 right now, but if you're thinking of the one that you hear everyone talking about, the one that has like all the reaction videos and people scream and cry, that's 5.3.
Right. So we're at 5.3. He's putting that much effort into like years and years and years. Like, can you imagine starting fresh and just putting that passion with a budget that's insanely big, without the technological limitations of 14? Oh my! That's one of the only things for me about 14. I wish they would. I wish they had. It's just it's a PS3 graphics time game at this point, right? If they had the tools for cinematics that they have today, like, can you imagine what they would do with Shadowbringers stuff? He does with 16. So I'm just very excited to see that sort of fresh ground, because when we look at 12, it's just very similar concept in that Sakaguchi says he played Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together for the Super Nintendo, and loved it so much. He literally, what's his name? Matsuno, right? That's the director's name.
Yeah, Matsuno.
Yeah. He literally was like, yeah, you need to come to Square Enix now. I don't care. Like, you're in this company. You will be making a Final Fantasy in the future. Like, he loved it that much. Right. So it's kind of the same thing, right? He like proved himself, and he gets his own Final Fantasy. So I mean, it's nothing new. Like, we're not in a space where that's never happened. Like, a new director steps in and tries his hand. So I'm just excited, man. I think it's gonna be great. The trailer looked fantastic. I love Soken's music, and I instantly was like, yeah, that's Soken 100%. And it's gonna be so cool, man. I think what I would need to happen to me narratively is, I hope it doesn't go too open world. I hope it focuses on driving the narrative forward creatively while still having an open world, explorable idea, which is what we hope they do with 7 Part 2 as well, right? Like, we don't want it to be super deformed cloud running 10 feet to the next town, right? If we want to be able to explore a little bit. So I hope they can do that, but I want it to be like 10, man. I want it to be a strong narrative. I love Final Fantasy because what we were saying, man, 7 is the game, the first AAA game in existence, right? The first game to have a novel type story. I want it to be known for that again. I want it to be the game, and I think it is with 14 and 7. I think it really is bringing that back now after 15. Like, I want it to be known as that again. Like, oh yeah, that's the like sophisticated story game. If you want to like really dig deep into characters and the nitty gritty of the writing, that's it.
Yeah, that's it, man. Absolutely. I really don't have any specific expectations with 16. I really have a deep trust of that team from everything that they've done with Final Fantasy 14 so far. Previously, I think before like really diving into 14, I thought that it was impossible to tell a compelling story in the setting of an MMO. And oftentimes, when I'm trying to convince people to play 14, like the single player Final Fantasy fans, when I'm trying to convince them to give it a shot, the roadblock for them is that like, well, it's not going to be as story driven. And I'm like, little do they know, like the story is like the main piece of meat. In fact, it's such the main thing that a lot of like hardcore MMO people are actually turned off by it, because you get in there and it's just like, oh, the game wants me to do story like the whole time. It wants me to focus on everything. Well, we got some
Unalesca.
We got Unalesca, we got Blitz, we got Work to Game. Oh my gosh, we got all these Final Fantasy people in here.
Yuna with the juicy host too. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Whoa. Oh, did she host? Oh my god, thank you so much. I didn't even see that pop up. I think my gosh, whoa, did you? Oh my god, with 71 viewers, are you serious? I didn't even see it. My notification didn't go off. Whoa.
What's good, Yuna? Good to see you again.
Oh my gosh, Yuna, thank you so much. We love you.
Legend in the community.
Yes, we need to have Yuna. In fact, we were gonna have Yuna on here, and it was right before I ended up. Going to the ER, and we ended up canceling that episode. That's gonna return. Yuna, I want you on here. I want you on here so bad. We're gonna have you back on here. Now that I'm mostly healthy, I still have those numbness episodes. Every now and
it's then. Like, have you guys seen The Princess Bride? It's like, he's only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
Yeah, I'm only mostly dead. I'm alive now. All right. I still have numbness in like my what do they call them? Extremities, my arms and legs, my limbs. But for the most part,
you need some qigong, some gong fu practices. I'll help you out.
Bro, my chi is low. That's what it is.
Yeah, man. You need a chakra from FF7. We got your back, man.
I do. Well, Blitz says maybe it's my superpower.
yeah, it could be.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm like, it's funny you mentioned 14, because I am like probably the ultimate target for this convincing someone to play 14, because I played A Realm Reborn on loop for like 1,000 years, it felt, back in 2013 and then the following years. So like, everybody who loves the game is like, oh god, yeah, Realm Reborn, you got to get through it, man. Heaven's Word is where it's at, dude. It starts to get so good. So I've seen the cinematics. You guys have seen in my YouTube. Like, I love reacting to them, because Visual Works just never misses. It's like the best film studio, right? But I'm probably the ultimate guy. So we were joking earlier, we might have to have an episode sometime where it's just like, put me in the hot seat and he like convinces me to play FF14. FF14 addict. Night Sky Prince convinces.
And you know what's so amazing about those cinematics, by the way, is that they're designed to have like this multiple watch experience. So you watch them the first time, like when they come out, right? And they get you hyped for the experience. And then you're meant to rewatch them after you finished the expansion. And it's like an entirely different experience because they put all like these like little subtle details and moments in there, and you rewatch them and then you're like, oh my gosh. And
so let me ask you something. Yeah. Do you see those scenes in the game like that are in the trailer, or is that like a you know what I mean? Like, do you go in Shadowbringers? Do you fight that like winged creature that comes down with the sword, and he has to turn into the Warrior of Darkness to kill him? Like, do you fight that thing?
So you do fight it. But cool. Okay. You do not magically turn into a Dark Knight unless you chose to play a Dark Knight. So the cinematics do put on a little bit. Like Work to Game here says, they aren't necessarily canon, but they're like a dramatization of what you'll be doing. And so a lot of the things in the cinematics do happen, but they happen in a very different context.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, Work to Game puts it great here. Imagine you have a dream. It's not accurate, but it's not accurate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was gonna say, like, are we gonna see Y'shtola like go to that council and like try to convince them to fight? Like, are we gonna see that in Endwalker?
Yeah, that'll probably be a cutscene. Yeah, that'll probably be a cutscene, and it'll probably be like extended. So there is some stuff that you can tell what will be a cutscene and what won't be, and it'll play out slightly different, but you'll notice those moments and it'll have that different context. It's sort of like you won't really be a paladin on the moon unless you choose to be a paladin. Yeah. But you still will be going to the moon, and you'll still probably fight the creature that they had that was on the moon. And and so it's kind of like it's almost like, you know what the perfect comparison for it is, in a way? It's almost like the secret movies for Kingdom Hearts.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
Right?
You the fight with Roxas, right? And then you do it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you see the deep dive trailer. You see Roxas and Riku fighting, right?
Yeah.
And then you can watch it again after it plays out, or like the Birth by Sleep movie in Kingdom Hearts 2, or you watch it.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it'll play out, but then certain details will be expanded upon or different, and then they'll just be like, oh.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely game. Now, I will say, I don't like MMOs. That has nothing to do with Final Fantasy. I just don't like MMOs.
I don't like MMOs either.
So that's promising that you say that you don't like them. Because 11, I've actually never played because I didn't have the opportunity when I was younger, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Endwalker for sure. Very curious.
FF11 probably would have turned you off because it's a lot more time consuming.
Fairly conventional MMO.
Blitz, thank you for the gift sub to Unileska.
Heck yeah.
I appreciate you. Whereas 14 is just like it respects your time. Right, and each one of these expansions is about the length of a single player Final Fantasy. So it's like 40 hours to complete from start to finish. Which again, and they remove so much of the grinding from the game too. Like you're just playing the story alone will take you from level 1 all the way to the level cap, and you'll never have to be like, dude, I spent such and such number of days like grinding. If you just want to play straight through the whole story without deviating, you can do that. And I actually think that's, I mean, for an MMO to have that there, that where you can get a single player Final Fantasy experience within an MMO, it almost feels like a single player Final Fantasy game, and then you have like an MMO post game.
Right. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I would be game for. Like, I wish there was a way I could just like see the cutscenes, or find a way to just like get into this. I don't know. There's got to be a way to experience it and play again. I don't know. We'll see.
You can skip around. You can skip around Reborn, dude, if you want. It's like $10, and you can story skip.
I might have to.
You can go to the inn.
For my sanity.
You can go to an inn, and in the inns. They have like this, like, it's like a little book, and you go to the book and it lets you rewatch the majority of the cutscenes in the game. And so you can just like literally just watch like the meat from like A Realm Reborn, or you could just YouTube like a summary. Because A Realm Reborn, while there's like a lot of foundational stuff that's set up there, I think
yeah, they had to rush it to save the game, so it's like not the strongest.
And so
can't blame them.
Right. And so when they're not rushing to try to save, a multi-billion-dollar company from failing, and when they got, and that's again that goes back to what makes 16 exciting in the first place, is that this is
that's what I'm saying,
right? Start fresh, not have to come into something that was basically failing, costing them
and if anything, that's more impressive. That's more impressive. The thing was a failure. Like nobody was interested in the world of 14. Proven. Nobody cares about it, and they came in and made people like it again. That's impressive.
Yeah. Right. It went from being the lowest rated mainline title to now with Shadowbringers, we're at like the highest rated.
That's awesome.
Title. So that should show you. It should tell you a lot right there. So
sure.
Okay, and then next topic. This is the spicy one. We have to talk about it. I don't think anyone ever lets me do one of these without asking. You guys, chat, y'all already know what it is. It's like I'm permanently attached to it. No matter how far I try to run, apparently. You seem to have really enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake, and having seen Integrate, what are your thoughts about the future? How are you feeling?
I am feeling very excited, and I said this on my channel. People had a heart attack. It's like I still think that everybody can be satisfied. I think the people who are really like worried can be satisfied.
You think I can be satisfied?
I think you can be satisfied.
You think I can be satisfied?
I think that your fears can be assuaged. I do, because I guess the way I worded it was this, like, because you do agree with me that you enjoyed the stuff that they adapted, right? Like you enjoyed the scenes that they adapted from the original material for the most part. I'm sure there's a couple. Right. Like for me, there's one scene that's worse. There's one scene that's actually worse, and it's the when the plate drops.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything to do with
the
plate drops was
right. Yeah, with a new viewer, they don't know what that is, so it's like it's just a tone shift. Like, why is there a cat? What? And then there's never seen again. So it's cool for us because we're like. But I was like, yeah, but that's not good for new people. But yeah, besides that, it's just so well done that, I mean, I have such faith, and I guess I'll put it like this: like, I had such a high expectation for this game. Like, I was holding it to an insane standard, and in my head, I'm like, there's no way it holds up to my storytelling standard. Like, I don't even know why I'm wanting this stuff, and it like exceeded what I wanted with the characterization and stuff, and I talk about this on Baby C channel too, for those of you who were there. Baby Seal 7 was that, like, the little scenes prove to me that they're just good and they understand these characters. For example, I mentioned there's this one scene near the beginning of the game, so it's pretty early. It's like chapter 3 before you meet a lot of the characters, and it's the first scene that kind of just cools down, and it's Tifa and Cloud just talking, and I think it's in her apartment. It's in his apartment or her apartment. They're just talking. And it's nothing crazy. There's no Sephiroth slicing through fate itself. There's no fighting a big ass monster. It's just two people talking. Two people who grew up together a long time ago, don't know each other so well anymore. Vague sexual tension, not really sure how to act. It's awkward, charming, it's believable, and it's just human. And it there he is. There's Schrodinger's Baby Seal.
Hey, Baby Seal.
Welcome. It made me almost emotional because I was like, oh my god! Like, we got Advent Children, which was very fun. Advent Children, very like action packed. But to me, like, I was like, oh, dude, these characters are human now. Like, they care so much about them. I mean, Aerith, Barrett. I mean, come on, Barrett. The humanity they brought to him, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. So for me, it's like, it is their characters. We kind of forget this, right? So for me, I'm not so worried, and I also feel that. I understand the fear completely because I had it for a split second when I saw the ending. I joked on Baby Seal's channel. It's like, that Joey from Friends meme where he's like, and then the eyes, like, oh shit, like he's smiling. He's like, oh, what the? So I had that moment where like, whoa, what's going on? What are we doing? Oh shit! And then it dawned on me like, wait, I get more of my favorite characters and story. I get more. I get to have a remake of my favorite thing, but also get new stuff. Like, it just dawned on me, and like I said earlier, kind of this like Star Wars, Marvel Cinematic Universe sort of approach to it, where they want us talking about it and stuff. But I think it's so impressive that it's like a dead game. It's over, but it feels like 1997 again. I'm sitting here with nice guy friends, being like, we're talking about what's going to happen in FF7. What? That shouldn't be possible, you know. So it's just very cool, and I do have faith because of part one, like the adaptive stuff. And I guess one of the things I would try to say to you, because it is heartbreaking to me when people get upset about it. So I want you to love it, you know. Is especially
a lot of people do. A lot of people want me to love it. Yeah.
And like I heard what you said on Baby Seal Chan. I agree with pretty much everything you said, man. Like, yeah, you don't want the themes to go away because they're incredibly good. Like, why would you change? Why would you fix what's broken and everything? But what I would say is the stuff at the ending is new stuff. But it didn't particularly change anything yet. Now it could come. It could change all kinds of shit, like we were talking about, right? They could have all kinds of stuff happen. But for now, they just gave us a remake and then added like this awesome sort of setup for Sephiroth. And for me, it's like they gave us the Advent Children style human Sephiroth duel, which, if you remember, we never fight Sephiroth with a sword in FF7. You fight him as, you know, the 7-winged monstrosity at the end. You fight him as Bizarro. You fight him Genova copy, you know, his Genova pieces over and over again. You never have a fight with him. So, you know, we got to play Advent Children, and it was just so crazy to think about that. They gave us that aesthetic. They gave us that fight. It doesn't take away from the end boss battle, because you never do that anyway. You never fight him with a sword. And I guess I would say, yeah, have faith if you enjoyed the stuff they adapted, because we don't know what they're going to do, right? What I personally think they do is it's going to be the same as part one every game. Like, we're going to get the story adapted, and then probably near the end, we're going to get like a new cool scene, or like we get our kind of like new addition to the story to end up finishing FF7 eventually. So it's not going to end like ambiguous like it did in the original. And then that's going to be it. We're still going to get all the scenes most likely, because I don't see them, like, they know it's their cash cow. They know their entire company rides on this game. I don't see them just like, yeah, let's take out the everybody's favorite moments of the game. So again, there's no way to know which one of us is right? Like, if he's worried that they're going to change that, we don't know yet.
Right.
But I have faith just because the storytelling's so good. And I said this on Baby Seals too. Something a lot of people don't know is to kind of like assuage worries. A lot of people talk about, oh, Nomura. If you look at the credits of FF7 original, it says in the opening credits, script or whatever based on the story by Nomura and Sakaguchi. So Nomura made the original story with Sakaguchi. As you know, Sakaguchi's kind of like the visionary. He wanted to have these kind of like tones in the game and stuff.
Oh yeah,
so
if you look at the credits for the original game, it's right there that Nomura and Sakaguchi are credited for the original story, and which also makes me kind of laugh when people say that Nomura wasn't hands-on with the story for the remake. I'm like, of course he played a huge role in helping Nojima write the scenario. People try to act like, no, he had nothing to do with it. I'm like, why wouldn't he? He helped write the original.
The characters. Why wouldn't he? Yeah.
Like,
why wouldn't he have a story?
Yeah,
that's what made me laugh when they had that interview recently, when it was like, they said, oh yeah, it was Nomura's idea to like, or not his idea. He pushed to kill Aerith because they were trying to kill like half the cast at the end and stuff. And he said, no, we gotta. So that was his idea. Like, so people should have more faith in that. If you're worried about it, it's his story that he made originally. Yeah, Sakaguchi's gone, but he's more of a visionary anyway at that point. Like, you know, he's always been kind of stepping back since probably 6, honestly. Kind of stepping back a little bit. 9 was his like swan song kind of thing. 9, 10, and then 12 was him as we like kind of bringing in new blood. So he's always been kind of on his way out. And have faith, guys. It's their characters, and that's all I'll say. Look at those new scenes for those of you who are like really worried about it, with just like Cloud and Tifa talking, Cloud and Aerith talking, Tifa and Aerith talking, and it's like they just know these women so well, and they understand, and they're taking away any like weird negative connotations about these characters. They're filling out characters like Yuffie. Like, look what they're doing for Yuffie, man. She's not just like, I'm in 2 scenes and I have 1 side quest, then I'm a ninja anymore. Like, think about what they're gonna do for Vincent.
That
it's
stuff I
very
like.
Cool. Yeah.
It's the other stuff that it's the other stuff. It's
so to
for me,
so
but yeah,
I've heard
that
a
stuff
bit
I do like.
you're worried about them pretty much like, what if they don't kill Aerith, like something crazy like that, right? Like that's your main fear, right?
Not necessarily. I just don't like the new themes at all. I don't like.
Yeah, you mentioned the theme.
I don't like Final Fantasy VII revolving around fate, multiverses, or those sorts of things. I just feel like it's the cliches that Creative Business Unit 1 has been leaning on very heavily for the past decade and a half, for at least the past 15 years. And it's not just a Final Fantasy VII Remake thing, it's a Final Fantasy 13 thing, it's a Kingdom Hearts thing, it's the third birthday thing. It's a type of trope that they have leaned on so heavily for the past 15 years that just utilizes the very most primitive of like shonen anime tropes. This sort of idea that once characters in a certain story becomes so popular that that they have to gear it more so toward the happy, be more positive, more happy. Basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is like the Evangelion movies. They have to be super fan servicey in a way, and I don't think that they will kill Aerith, but I wouldn't say that would be like my big concern. It's more like they're going to sort of turn it into something that does not have the same level of depth and meaning, and I feel like we've already seen that they're going to be going further into that direction. I think a lot of the fan theories are about trying to convince people that it's not, but I think that when you look at things like them potentially opening up the FF7 multiverse, Zack coming back, there's also a general lack of stakes too that just plagues the game.
I heard you say this. Yeah, like what if everybody comes back? It's like, okay, like,
there's already no stake. Yeah, there's already a huge lack of stakes. The plate collapse and nobody really dying, and a lot of fan theories suggesting that Jesse may not even be dead from the result of that. And with the Sector 7 plate in the original and how heart-crushing that was, and now to build up those characters, to flesh them out, and you're thinking that moment is going to happen, and then it just falls flat. And I disagree about, someone in the chat says, YOLO Alchemist says, I disagree about the lack of states. Sephiroth is the most powerful he's ever been. You ever watch JoJo Part 3? I mean, like, Dio is like the most powerful he's ever been, but it's almost like Dio just has whatever powers or doesn't have whatever powers he needs for any particular situation. Like, possibly Sephiroth can time travel now. But possibly
it's tough, right?
He could just have whatever power he needs to antagonize. It feels like.
Well, no, it's tough because we don't know what's gonna happen, right? So neither of us can sit here and say like it's gonna be good because, or it's gonna be like this is happening. Like the Zack thing, very intriguing. Obviously, we talked about it a ton on Baby Seals, right? What the hell does that mean? But I'll put it to you like this. I guess what I mean is I have faith because, for example, let's say Jesse comes back, right? I would agree because I'd be like, okay. But I'm just giving it a chance, I guess is what I'm saying, because I assume it's not one game anymore. Like we had 7 Remake, which for me took like 40 hours or probably 50 hours on stream, right? So it's not like that's the whole length of FF7 original, right? So now that it's a multi-saga thing, I would be fine with them. Like maybe they die later, for example. Like maybe they live and they do something else. But these characters are so good at the same time. So there are certain narrative ones that like kind of have to go. Like for example, Aerith. Like unless they change it to the point where like there's a different way to stop Meteor, Aerith doesn't go into the planet anymore. She does some less, like that's totally changing it. Like she's got to go. She's got to go into the live stream. Zack has to kind of go, right? I still think he's going personally.
But okay, we'll so and then one of the things that touching back on that, with say Zack for example, right, and characters dying later, and I think that's often used as that like you just have the character they'll just die later. It'll be like a Final Destination thing where everyone who is meant to die still dies off, which I feel like would be a terrible cliche way to approach things. I actually hope that does not happen, and where everyone who is supposed to die like suddenly like finds a way to die, because not only is that predictable, it also comes off as just kind of cringe to like go the Final Destination route where everyone just re-dies. But I think that a lot of the deaths that happen in Final Fantasy VII, it's not just that they die, it's specifically where they die in the story and the consequences of that going forward, right? So it's not just that Avalanche died, it's where specifically that Avalanche dies that has a huge impact on Barrett and all the stakes going forward, right? It's not It's not necessarily how Zack died or the fact that Zack dies, it's when Zack dies and how pivotal that was. So even if Zack dies later on, it's not. It has entirely different consequences. In fact, Disposable Outcome here puts it really great. You want story changes. You want to believe the story changes are making for a more interesting story, and not for plot. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I want more interesting. I like interesting story changes. So there's a lot of great story changes I think that can be made. But I don't want them. Right. Yeah. But I don't want story. I'm not going to support change just for change's sake. You know.
Oh God, no. Yeah.
Like,
no, we shouldn't do that.
Right. Like things shouldn't feel like we're just doing things differently because we're doing things differently. Now there are some things that I can definitely praise about what they're doing. I think having Yuffie and like this whole like new plot thread that they have with Yuffie, I think that's an amazing idea. I think that's a great idea. Stuff like that is what I thought that they were primarily focusing on.
Right.
It's really when they went into the multiverse and reviving characters who had died months before the game actually starts, like Zack, and doing things like that. And that's when I was sort of like, okay, that's not.
I understand everything you're saying. Right. Yeah, nothing you're saying is egregious at all. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with most of what you're saying too. The only other thing I'll add is that it is all about execution, right? Mm-hmm. And for me personally, I'm not so married to like them having to be super faithful, simply because it's their story.
Oh yeah, neither am I. I want to clarify that I'm totally. You guys should know by now, because some people still throw this out here at me, that I'm totally not a purist. I don't know how that got started. People think that I want like turn-based FF7 still. Yeah. I don't know where people got that from. I was the one. I was making theory videos the whole time about how things would change, and people thought NSP just don't like change. I'm like, no. It's what they've chosen specifically that I have gripes with. It's not like an arbitrary. Oh, I'm comparing this to what I grew up with, and it's not what I grew up with. I don't give a fuck that it's not what I grew up. I didn't want it to be that.
Right. It sounds like you two are in the same boat as me. Just it's about execution, right? Like
it's all about execution.
If it's bad, it's bad.
Right.
So I guess my only shift, like I agree with you pretty much 100%. My only shift on it in the fork of the road is like, because it's their story, and maybe because I'm like in film, or I'm like an artist myself. I'm so like. I can't imagine being an artist 23 years later, coming back to a project and be like forced to do it, just like you said, like to do it exactly the same is like, it's crazy to ask
I never. Yeah.
So just because of the idea that it's a pretty unique project that was never really finished, that probably one of the greatest projects on earth, people have begged to know what happens at the end of FF7, like story, like what happens to all these characters, right? I think I kind of give them that credit for, I want it to wrap up, man. I want to know what happens. And I'm all for like I said, at that fork of the road when I was Joey from Friends, like, oh, what now? why am I seeing Zack? Mr. Gongaga? Here? What the hell? Like, I, at that fork of the road, said, wait, I get more content with my favorite characters? Cool. So I agree. Jesse dying there, super important. Biggs dying there, super important. I think my only difference is the execution. I don't know what they're going to do. I have a lot of good ideas where I think it could be done well if it was executed well. And I will say, even for stuff like, I personally don't think there's time travel, but even if there is something along those lines, I think it's more like oracles with like knowledge from the planet. like the past and the future. You know, like they both access the life stream, Aerith in a very chthonic, natural way, Sephiroth in a disgusting, you know, forceful way. He forced the knowledge out, an alien way. Like, even if that happens, it can be executed well, right? And like people, so for instance, like literary wise or like film wise, people use the word trope very liberally. Like, oh, it's a trope. It's a trope. Tropes are not bad by any means. Tropes are just things that exist in literature, right?
Tropes are tools.
Cliche is something that can be bad. If it's like, okay, it was all just a dream. Okay, that's a cliche. Like Jesus, yeah. It's been done 1,000 times. Yeah. In a fantasy, you know, whatever. Like it happens in all the Lord of the Rings copycats, right? So, like, as long as the trope is executed well, it's good. If it's cringe, like kind of like FF13 style, sometimes that's a bad example of a trope, right? So I would say it could be executed good if they use these characters well. They've shown me personally that they know the characters very well. And I'm just down for more content from these artists. Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from, man. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I don't even disagree with you. Because the themes are super important, especially from a storytelling standpoint. So it's just an interesting fork in the road. I would say try to have a little faith. I could be completely wrong. It could suck.
No, I could be completely wrong too. In fact, what I always tell people is that genuinely nobody hopes that I'm wrong more than me. Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I do not want this thing to be right.
That's good. That's good.
Because that means one less good Final Fantasy game for me to play. I would prefer all this I'm foreseeing to be vastly incorrect. My hope is that I can get on here and tell you guys I was a jackass. I was completely wrong. I had no idea what I was talking about. I was talking out of my butt. I don't believe that's the case, and I wouldn't even talk about it to this extent if I didn't believe that was the case. But I do hope that is the case.
Yeah, it's understandable. Yeah, I think it can be done. Again, I do hope you'll be able to enjoy it, just because I know how much you love the original. Clearly, right? Yeah. So I do hope you'll be able to enjoy it. And it sounds like you're interested too in like getting more deeper backstories for the characters, stuff like that, which is definitely par for the course. I hope it's good, and I don't even know how I would end it, man. At this point, that's why I'm just glad it's not like a Star Wars Episode 9, because that's the only thing that would worry me now. A Game of Thrones or Star Wars Episode 9, where a different artist inherits the story and goes like, all right, how are we ending this?
Well, to some degree, we have that with Hamaguchi taking over for Nomura, but the only exception here is that Nomura is still staying as a creative producer. So
creative director, I think.
Creative director. Sorry, yeah.
He's there. He's just like probably they're sending him over to Kingdom Hearts every day, but they probably had a story. I mean, they absolutely had a story treatment for like the whole remake project.
Right.
Probably similar to like the Sakaguchi Nomura story like beforehand. And I'm sure now they're kind of just like doing it, like executing it. And then you got, of course, Nojima, just like he did in the original, taking Nomura's story, penning it to a script, right? So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think, well, let me ask you this.
What's up?
What would they have to do for it to be good? And again, no one knows the answer, right? Like, what would they have to do with the knowledge you have for it to be good? Because say you took over tomorrow, what would you do on the project?
Oh man,
I still think everybody can love it. I still think me and Night Sky can both love it.
Me and Baby Seal have tried to talk about this for quite some time, and I've tried to talk about this with other people too. I tried to talk about this with Mike from Resonant Art. I tried to talk to this about a couple other people. We were just kind of like, how can they turn this around for people in our disposition who are really not feeling the angle of the Arbiters and the remake sequel and those types of things. And the way they set things up with the Arbiters and the end and the way things conclude, there are pathways in which I can be more satisfied or that I can be pleasantly surprised, but it's very difficult for me to conceptualize a way in which they can make me think that this is as good or better than the original, given the way that they're approaching what they're doing now and how they've potentially revived Zack and how they've suggested that maybe there'll be multiple timelines and doing that sorts of thing. And honestly, I think I could have maybe even dealt with the remake sequel type approach to the story had it not utilized, or had it not resulted in characters who died in the original and removing any sense of urgency or stakes from that. And I think that's what did it. So I'm not going to say that there is no path out there whatsoever to make me more satisfied with it than the original, or equally satisfied. But I will say that maybe there is something that I cannot imagine.
Right.
It going.
I was gonna say that's the only fallacy I would pull, is if you just said like, it's
impossible.
Create something, because I mean, I hear all the theories by like Max, who's great, and all these people and stuff, and like, I think it's all just crazy theory. We have no idea what they're gonna do. It's probably gonna exceed. I was, even I have new ones every day. We were talking on Seal's channel the other day, thinking about this whole like Oracle angle and like, oh, what if this and that? It's like a battle of wits between Aerith and Sephiroth, kind of like trying to move the pieces in their favor the whole time and like kind of outmaneuver each other and stuff. I think it's a really cool concept. But again, I'm not so married to it needing to be exactly the same. But I can already think of like, for example, Jesse, right? Jesse, Biggs. I think there's a way even for Jesse and Biggs to still serve the same narrative function, but still survive. For example, what if Jesse like now has a disability because she got like hurt when she was crushed, right? Yeah. And then like Barrett is enraged because he wants revenge for them hurting Jesse so bad, just like in the original. But it's not just like, oh, she's dead or she's out of the story. So
I'm into stuff like that. Yeah. I'm into that. I'm into that 100%. I want to start taking questions from the audience now. This is always my favorite part. I want to go back to TTN Chris 95. First of all, thank you for the 100-bit donation. TTN says, aside from 7R, with the way they're remaking 7 OG with Ever Crisis, do you think all older titles like 5 and 6 will get the same treatment, while 8 and 9 will get the same treatment as 7R?
Interesting. I think 9 would almost be good in the Ever Crisis select personally, but yeah, 8. I feel 8 is super underrated. I didn't talk about this earlier, but believe it or not, 8 is another one that's on like my highly well told story, and people are gonna be like, "What the hell is he talking about?"
Oh man, people are gonna come at you now.
Yeah, because a lot of people, it's almost like a meme at this point with 8, where it's like, yeah, the story makes no sense. So I just played it recently, and after 7 remake, and I'm like, what makes no sense about this? Like, are you not reading? What's the deal? Because it's abstract at the end, but it's not like incomprehensible insanity. Like, it's quite clear what's happening. Like, as a concept, oh, she compresses time so she can kind of like rule everything at once. But there's no like, this makes no sense. Like, if you read the stuff, you can figure it out, I guess is what I'm saying. Triple Triad, yes, it automatically makes it good. But sub gifts, hell yeah.
Oh my gosh, Tashido is popping off. Tashido, thank you so much for the what was that, 5 gift subs, dude? Thank you so much. Tashido is great. He basically carries the channel on his big shout out to Tashido. Baby Seal says, Night Sky Prince has always admitted that there is some possibility he hasn't considered that can turn things around for him. In the same vein, I have to admit that there are ways that they can ruin the game that I can't even. Exactly, that's a good point.
Oh, I agree completely.
That's the most neutral point that I think anyone could ever make.
Like, pretty much my sum up on the situation here is like, I know that Ryan likes the game from when he was a kid, so I just hope he can enjoy it as well as everybody who loved it as a kid. But I hope there's like awesome new narrative devices, because I don't want the same stale story, and I don't mean like the story is stale. I mean, I want them to tell it better, the same story.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that a lot of people think when it comes to me and like say FF7. I think that a lot of people think that the path that I would want looks the most like the original game, and that's not necessarily true, especially not anymore, because if they try to dial back to the original game, one, I would be like, you fucking cowards. You teased that you were going in a different direction, and then you got scared and you went back. That's even worse to me than them having the idea and it being bad but they still stick with it. At least then I would respect that they're like, I don't care, it's what we want to do, I'm sticking with it, right?
I was gonna say, like, you must respect the balls the size of the city of Gongaga, like, on these people. They're like, you know, even hinting that they're gonna tamper with FF7, like, they are ballsy. But I just love that they're artists. You know, they're like, we're telling our story. So
I just hope that in 5 or 10 years we're looking back on it as balls and not hubris. And that that's I guess that's my biggest concern. Right. And I get that it is their story, but also, you know, people you know, not everything that a creative puts out is a banger. You know, most of this staff also worked on Final Fantasy 13. So
13 not so well executed. Oh, yeah, and like the 15 thing.
Yeah,
I think from what I've seen, it's like you said about 14, right? They really seem to be learning from their missteps in current years. Like with 15, they seem to be kind of circling back around and going like, okay, that didn't work so well. Notice with 7 Remake, there was no like movie, novel that you need to read to play it, right? It's like, okay, play the game. So it seems they're kind of learning from their ways. 14 has been, from what everybody tells me, consistently just getting better, like every single expansion. So, I mean, they really seem to be almost learning from that 14 approach too, which is like, let's reapproach Final Fantasy. Let's kind of start from the ground up, focus on story again, what made us good. And that's why I'm excited for 16 as well, like we were saying earlier, you know?
One thing I always say is, no 2 Final Fantasies are ever bad for the same reason.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
They're never bad for the same reason. They even if they'll make entirely different mistakes. They may learn from one thing and then mess up in another area, but they'll never mess up on the same thing twice. That much I can say about them. Let's get some more questions in here. There was one from Peachy Tima.
Keep them coming, guys.
About does that give you the same emotional impact if Jessie gets hurt and is permanently disabled, as opposed to her dying? Do you think?
From a narrative structure, like from her function as a character, yes. Like I'm not. I said this before. I'm very against like the kind of like Game of Thrones, like gratuitous violence angle. Like it's super the whole like edgy thing. I think is super overdone. Now again, with something like Aerith, that she has to enter the life stream, for example. So that would probably need to happen narratively. But I mean, yeah, like for Barrett, you have to look at it like this. For her function as a character, he mentioned Barrett, who needs to be like just further compelled. Keep in mind, he already hates Shinra. They took his arm, killed his friend, you know, all this horrible stuff. But yeah, he needs to get that just extra to go on the Sephiroth journey with Cloud and everything, hate Shinra and fight them. So yeah, I think so. But if she's disabled, like, I mean, negligible, I think. And I would ask you this: are there unthought of benefits for people who might not want Jessie? We got a raid too.
We got a raid. 43 people. Tiffany Lockhart. Oh my God! Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Welcome, Raiders. Pretty thick raid. Actually, everyone, we're discussing the future of Final Fantasy. If you have any Final Fantasy questions, 14, 7 Remake, 16, please, or even older titles stuff. Just go ahead.
We've been talking about everything tonight.
We're talking about everything. Totally. There was one comment I wanted to get here. It said, related to how you said most of the staff who worked on this remake also worked on 13. Please do remember that Nomura himself was publicly disappointed in 13. I think the quote that you're talking about, if we're both talking about the same quote, was about 15 and not about 13.
Oh, he was definitely disappointed in 15.
Yeah, and I think I know which quote you're talking about, and that quote was 1000% about Final Fantasy 15, where it was the one where he says that Final Fantasy, he more or less said that he feels like the modern series is kind of lacking. He said that, he basically said that I don't think that they make Final Fantasies with the same philosophy that Sakaguchi laid down anymore, or with the same, or that has everything. If you say you remember the article very well, if you can, send it to me. But I've read everything that man has ever said. And that's the only thing that I can recall with him expressing that. But if you can prove me wrong, you can send me something. Please do. Tiffany has a great question here. Do you think they're going to try and go and try to make another version of Dissidia in the future?
So, I have an interesting angle on this that I had a revelation recently, because I always kind of defend Kingdom Hearts. There's a lot of people hating on Kingdom Hearts, saying FF7 feels like Kingdom Hearts, so we hate it. It's like, I had a revelation. Wait a second. Kingdom Hearts is just a Disney billboard machine. Everybody knows this, but I was like, the fact that it even has any compelling story whatsoever is insane. Like, it shouldn't even be possible. It's literally like Smash Bros or Dissidia having an like insanely good story that like millions of people look forward to. Nobody cares about Dissidia. Nobody cares about Smash Bros. It's like the most innocuous, whatever. They're all in the same game. It's clearly just baloney. The fact that we care about these characters, and it's just like, yeah, it's Disney advertisement. You go to every world, you got to fight the guy, is insane to me.
Yeah.
It's actually insane. So I think if they approached a Dissidia in the same way they approach Kingdom Hearts, for example, and like actually tried to make some sort of cohesive narrative, it would be cool. I don't think it's possible. I think Kingdom Hearts is like an anomaly because it shouldn't exist. It somehow has an interesting story, but I'm game, man. Let's do it.
Again, this really goes back to Final Fantasy XIV, which has basically the way Final Fantasy XIV sort of treats the other Final Fantasies. It's almost like there may be like folklore or like possibilities of things that might have happened, almost like fairy tales, really, right? And then that lore will have its way of like working its way into like Final Fantasy XIV's main lore as well. So concepts like the life stream are in Final Fantasy XIV and things like that. The Crystal Tower from Final Fantasy III, and the way like the gunblade works. So it basically takes all the Final Fantasies and works them into like one cohesive structure. And I think that a lot of people talk about how great the Dissidia Opera Omnia's like story is. So yeah, like basically, I hear about that a lot. Yeah, like people are like Opera Omnia actually has like a surprisingly decent story too. So yeah, I do want them to bring back Dissidia. I do think that I do want to see it as a fighter. But if they do make a Dissidia fighter, I think they're gonna have to drop like the classic Dissidia battle arena style, and they're probably gonna have to get a team that knows how to make actual like fighting games to actually work on it. Yeah,
if they did like a Smash Bros. Final Fantasy, I think that'd be so sick because
absolutely.
You could do the side scroller like story like they did in Brawl with like awesome cutscenes, boss fights, and then you're not just stuck in the arena battles like Dissidia. Even I hear the older ones are actually pretty good, but I never had a PSP. But I hear those are actually pretty sweet.
Oh,
but
they're good.
I downloaded like the demo to NT and like was so angry in about 5 minutes. I can't believe they put out this product that I just stopped playing.
So the way Dissidia started, it was a Kingdom Hearts game in early development. And
actually?
Yeah, it was a Kingdom Hearts game.
There we go. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, so this is why Dissidia plays in the way it does. Like the first one, it was going to be a Kingdom Hearts fighting game. And Square was just like, there's no way that Disney, they're just not gonna approve of this. So Nomura stepped in and he's like, okay, what if we switch this from away from like Disney characters, and he's like, what if we put Final Fantasy characters in there instead? I can't remember. It was like, I think it was like the 20th anniversary of not the 20th, 25th. Something, yeah, maybe like 25th or something like that. And it was a big anniversary for Final Fantasy, and it's like, okay, we'll make this for the anniversary. We'll put Final Fantasy characters in there instead. And then that's why, of course, like if you play Opera Omnia, I mean not Opera Omnia, if you play Duodecim, that was the second Dissidia game on PSP. Actually, if you play either one of them, it feels very, very, very Kingdom Heartsy, and I say this in a good way. A lot of times that's set with negative connotation. I'm saying it here. I'm saying it here with positive connotation. It feels almost like Kingdom Hearts 2 in some ways, and that's actually because the battle planner who worked on Kingdom Hearts 2 went to work on the Dissidia series after, and now that same guy is actually working with 7 Remake, which I also think has a fantastic combat system. So that guy's just really talented with combat in general. But anyway, that's the lore of Dissidia.
That's awesome.
Let's get some more questions.
Yeah, keep them coming, man. I mean, we could talk about this stuff all night.
Yes.
So direct us, you know.
Yes,
direct us.
please. Yes,
Yeah.
you guys are the directors here. Let me see. There were some other ones. For NSP, are you excited for the FF7 novel next year? I'm indifferent. I mean, I just I really don't feel strongly about it one way or the other. Philip,
Yeah, I think his stance is now like he needs to be impressed. It seems like, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Like it seems like you kind of whatever. Okay, they're doing stuff. Like it's like he hopes it makes him feel better about the stuff he's feeling.
Yeah.
But like we don't want to. And again, that's why I'm trying to be very careful what I even say. Like we don't want to force him to do anything. We don't want to force him to have to like it. I hope he does. Like honestly,
I'm gonna consume
we don't want to force him to read the novel if he doesn't want to.
No, I'll read it. I'll read it. Are you gonna play Integrate when it launches? This one was asked at me. I don't have a PS5, and I struggle with justifying spending $500 for like a 4-hour DLC. Not even like the whole game, because I already played Remake, and while playing it in 4K 60 FPS is going to be really nice. Because again, I can't stress enough how much I love that game's combat system. I can't justify shelling out for that. Yeah, but
it is I think it combined every single Final Fantasy's battle system, and I remember talking about this before it came out, and it's got the FF10 strategy where you kind of go through the menus. It's got the ATB, obviously, right? It's got the old school turn-based. It's got 13 kind of cinematic look. It's got the 12. It's like, ooh, okay, we're running around now. It's got everything. It's got the 15, cinematic, but not weird. It's just good.
100%. I love it. Actually. The combat. I did like my top 5 battle systems in the series video, and legitimately, I put it as number 2. So again, you guys know no biases with me when it comes to this stuff. I tell it how I think it is. Thoughts on Devil May Cry battle creator / designer joining the FF16 team.
That's great, dude. I mean, nobody's gonna say Devil May Cry doesn't have amazing combat.
Yeah. I think it's cool too. Again, like I was saying about how much I loved Remake's combat system, I do think that I also like action gaming stuff. Like I want to do sick combos and like a whole bunch of aerial stuff, which Remake's combat system really doesn't fully let you do, at least not in like the action game sense,
Yeah.
So
I think
I look forward to that.
Fix that with a jump button, right? Because then you can just use the jump and attack instead of like awkwardly they jump you up automatically. We'll see.
Yeah, and so for me that kind of stuff will be really, really cool. I actually really look forward to that, and one thing I think would be really awesome is if I had that Devil May Cry style action, and then I also had Remake's command menu on there. Yeah. So I can do those sick aerial combos and actually pull up that command menu mid-fight and actually select different commands and stuff. And so I feel like that would be really, really cool. And a lot of people, you said it, and people in chat are saying that they'd like for a Remake maybe to have a jump button. Actually, I would like it to go the opposite direction then, because I don't want 16 and 7R to necessarily feel the same. I just want them to both have command menus, I think. But I want them to feel different outside of that. YOLO Alchemy.
I'm interested what they do, because 7 Remake feels like such a marriage of everything. It's like, where do they go from there? Like, you can only evolve that idea so much. But then again, I mean, Devil May Cry has been having action gameplay since the PS2, and it's still evolving. So I think they can keep just improving on it.
I think they got a lot of space,
having the Yuffie trailer, the team attacks and stuff, right? So that's coming. That's very exciting. Can't wait for that part 2.
Question for both of you: what do you think of the prospect of no party in the gameplay for Final Fantasy 16?
I think that trailer is so skeletal, man. We don't know anything. Like I kind of have the same stance with 7 Remake. Like we just don't know. I mean, there could be a party of 20 people in that game. It showed like 2 minutes of one dude fighting like a troll looking thing. It showed what's his name, Clive fighting the other. Like, okay, it could be him or it could be 50 people like Chrono Cross. Like, we don't know. So I'm open to either. It's my tagline now. Apparently, in the past couple weeks, execution, man. It's all about execution, right? Is it fun? If I'm alone, it better give me a Breath of Wild feel, right? When I'm running around, I just need to explore. I need to have that like lonely journey feel. Let's lean into that heavy, as long as it's done well, right? Or let's have a party where I can switch or something, right? It's got to be well done. That's the main thing for me. Blood being added to Intergrade says, hooray. I'm very relieved by it because, again, I'm super against gratuitous violence and, like, you know, for the edginess of it and everything. But there are certain situations where, like, when Biggs gets, like, shot 20 times and then Cloud finds him and he just has, like, some dirt on his face, like I said on Baby Seals, right? It's like, wait, did he, like, fall down the stairs? What happened to him? What's his injury? We don't know what his injury, like, why is he just passing out because he's tired? There are times where it's like Cloud is treating him as if he found him like full of bullet holes, right? It's like in that very kind of like keep him calm, it doesn't look good type way, but like he probably wouldn't treat him like that unless he had injuries on him, right? So I think it's good unless there's a magic system, a hard magic system, as Brandon Sanderson would say, that explains why like when Sephiroth stabbed the president, it was like this kind of gray whispers matter instead of blood, right? Unless there's a magic system, like, oh, maybe his sword like can warp the space-time, like when he cut through fate itself at the end. But we don't have that yet, so I think it needs to be there in certain scenes, which I'm sure we're all thinking of a certain one. There should probably be blood for it, for full impact.
Yeah. It also mentioned like a potential M rating. That's not happening because we already know that it's still a T-rated game. So
it probably won't.
And the whole series is probably going to be tiered. Locomotions. How come you never cover FF7 Remake anymore? Because as the FF7 Remake Reddit, Twitter, I've been ratioed so many times. It's covering the game has hurt my mental health. And so I just don't do it anymore because people. That's
what I want to say too. Like for those of you
people aren't interested,
I'm taking a very, as you can see, kind of like I'm just positive about stuff because I love it. Like my angles, I want him to enjoy it because I want him to be happy. Like, please, whoever's watching, like don't be commenting some dumb shit. Like, we can't force him to enjoy anything, and moreover, he doesn't have to. Like, every Final Fantasy is different, and that's why we all have our favorites, right? Usually the first one you play, like unironically, right? But he has the right to not like whatever he wants to. He has the right to be afraid. I feel the same exact thing. Like, if they totally take out everything, like Aerith dying, this and that, and it's executed kind of weird, that's not going to be good. We don't want to see that. I have a little bit more faith that it'll be executed well, no matter what they do. But I mean, he's got the right to feel whatever he wants. Don't be being an asshole. I get death threats every day because I'm in the martial arts community.
Oh,
it is not fun. Nobody deserves that shit. Leave him alone.
Oh, I didn't know the martial arts community was like that.
Oh, dude, it's the most toxic place on earth. It's all insecure lunatics. But I will personally beat your ass if you're being toxic to Ryan. I will come to your house and I will do some Tifa spinning bullshit to your face.
I only thought the fighting game community was like that, but I guess fighting in real life is also like that.
Think about it, right? The fighting game community is literally a bunch of people insecure that like some dude beat him in Smash Bros. We're like, can you imagine when it's like, it's this caveman idea, right? For a man to admit like another man is stronger than him. What does it imply from a caveman, simple man perspective? It implies like, oh, you could take my stone house and my sticks and my woman. Ugh. No, he's not stronger than me. Ugh. So it's this very like caveman approach. It's just like idiots, man. Idiots. So
I love you, bro.
No surprise.
I love you.
No surprise. But anyways,
Pichitima asks
if you mess with Ryan.
Philip, you're the best, man. Pichitima asks, do you think FF7 Remake is a remake or a sequel?
I think it is a very creative endeavor that is probably both. And I think that's super cool. I said it earlier, I don't want to repeat myself too much. This Marvel Cinematic Universe idea, we're sitting here talking what the hell's going to happen to Sephiroth in 2021. That's crazy. That shouldn't be possible. We're sitting here, wondering what's going to happen. It's just, I'm so glad that this conversation allows me to meet people like Ryan, like Baby Seal, Clark, just Blitz, all the guys from the Sleep Easy. It was just so much fun to be able to talk about this. It brings people together. It's all positive stuff. I think it's probably both, and I think it's super clever. Wish I had thought of it myself. Like, it's awesome. A requel. Yeah, there you go.
Good. I completely agree. I think that they are going for the requel idea. I think that they're trying to make it both. Because I think, at Dirge of Cerberus, at the end, we were kind of left with that cliffhanger, right? And Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII has never really had that conclusive end. So I think that what they're wanting to do, and this is why they are trying to even use the arbiters and the idea of prophecies and maybe time being out of flow or something like that. I think the reason is because they're trying to bring in ideas that were done ahead of time and bringing them back into the remake and trying to conclude all that into one neat package so that
I said it on Clark's channel too, but my thought is they probably, all the stuff we're worried about, we probably never know. And I think that's one of the coolest things. It's probably set up, if they're smart, I think personally, this is how I would do it. This whole idea, it's all going to be implication. We're going to get our same remake. Most of the same story beats are exactly the same with some extra fun stuff, like the Sephiroth fight at end of part 1. And then we'll have our, what's going on? Mystery. We'll get a conclusion at the end instead of, screen goes white and then we wonder if they all died. But I think it's them, if you are super enthusiastic, like me and Ryan, and you want to dive into it and be like, wait a second, let's go through how Aerith said that certain line at this scene in part 1. Let's compare that to how she talked in part 2. Let's compare to how Sephiroth talks in Advent Children versus how he talks here. What sort of pronouns he uses, like people were talking about the Japanese translation. It's very fascinating. And I bet it's super rewarding for people who want to dive into it. But if it's a good story and the storytelling is good, you don't have to. You enjoy it. It's well-told narrative. And if you want to put time into it, like I mentioned, the Stormlight Archive, I think being the best example of this, you are endlessly rewarded, but it's not needed. That's the best place to do it.
K-chan asks, with regards to combat system of Final Fantasy games, do you think we will ever see a Final Fantasy go back to turn-based to compete with Persona and Yakuza that pretty much took over the system? I'm going to say no, and the reason is because even though Persona and Yakuza do sell very well as JRPGs, they still don't sell nearly as well as Final Fantasy or a lot of the mainstream action RPGs. I think what they want to do is they want to their competition, Final Fantasy's competition, or the way that Square Enix sees it, their competition is not other JRPGs. Their competition is Western RPGs.
I hope they don't, personally, because it's, for me, Final Fantasy, the reason I love it so much, the reason I was inspired from these artists, and they continue to, is they're always doing something new, man. They're always doing something new. I'm fine if they, do a crazy evolution of turn-based mixed with something but for me, they're always pushing the envelope, dude. I would hate to see them just be like, well, I mean, this is what happens maybe if 7 Remake fails. They're like, well, our company's destroyed. Let's go back to, because we don't have any money, let's make a turn-based game and appeal to a smaller audience and stuff. I hope it doesn't happen. I want to see him just keep being super, like Ryan said at the beginning, new stories, new ideas. Let's push forward, man.
I agree. Well, I agree with myself, but yeah, no. But yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, I agree with everything you said, I should say. But yeah, I want to see new territory, which actually segues into this next question really well. Why are the developers expected to innovate / overhaul the battle systems in every game? If FF7 Ars of Combat is a hit, why not maintain that system going forward? I actually want to say, I kind of think that you're right. And when we look back on Final Fantasy now has this idea that it's completely different every single time. But if you look back 1 through 10, we're not that different. There's a formula there that you can observe.
Yeah. ATB was there from 4 all the way through 9, and then 10 was actually turn-based again with the conditional turn order, and then 11's an MMO, 12 is a weird offline MMO sort of thing. 13 is like a weird experiment. Like it's they're kind of slowly getting there. But for me, what's cool about 7R battle system is that you can tell they've been wanting to do this for like 15 years, and they finally nailed it because of technology and stuff. Like they've been trying since 13, man, but they finally got that like cinematic mix. So it's not just like hack and slash from one angle and stuff. You can move the camera and the super slow mo and stuff. For a filmmaker like me, that's juicy, man. That's juicy. Yeah. And they got all the strategy. And you can have like the Dark Souls sort of fighting and dodging and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think that they should really innovate, and that sounds terrible, but I don't think that they need to like I don't think that they need to keep coming up with new combat systems. I really think that they got something good going with 7R, and I'm pretty sure that whatever 16 has is going to be really good. I feel like that they need to find some middle ground, some combination between whatever those two systems will be, and just really just give new takes and give better different ways to approach combat and things like that. Basically the same way they had been doing Final Fantasy 1 through 10, where it was mostly still the same, but in every game you got to do something new, whether that was drawing magic or whether that was the materia system and how that played out in combat, or being able to control summons the way you did in 10. I'd rather see them play with that stuff and just have a combat system that works consistently. And it works for so many games, dude. So many game series. Final Fantasy is the only game series I can ever even think of that actually redoes combat from the ground up to the point of where sometimes mainline games in the same series are not even the same genre of game. And it's just like
look at 10 versus 15, right?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Totally. I don't see a need for that, right? I think improve on 7R's battle system.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish.
No, I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
I would love to see them push the story, because for me, they've been pushing storytelling a lot more than gameplay, man. Like we talk about FF6 is like an insane storytelling thing for the Super Nintendo. FF4 is an insane storytelling, right? They're always pushing it. FF1 is insane for storytelling. There's actual like characters like Garland and stuff. What? It's awesome. 7 changes storytelling forever. Like literally changes the medium of video games forever. FF7. FF8. Look at the opening of FF8 compared to the ending of FF7. It's a totally different way of story. It's incredibly high end compared to FF7, right? FF10 does it again. I mean, the sending scene with Yuna. Some of those cutscenes literally inspired me to pursue it. Like I just loved it so much, filmmaking. And 15 versus 13, what it could have been. 7R. Like I want to see them transform the medium again of storytelling in video games, because that's what they're good at, in my opinion.
I completely agree. In fact, I feel like that should be their focus, really, is pushing storytelling in video games. And that really used to be their focus. Gameplay was never really the big focus of what Final Fantasy was. Turn-based combat was there, and it was meant to be serviceable, right? But it's really more in the modern era, again, where they want to compete with Western games, a lot of Western RPGs, that they want to have those types of battle systems that really draw people in. And that's why they've been trying to make things faster and snappier and things like that. But again, like what Final Fantasy has always really been about is the story. And whenever I see people so divisive about whether Final Fantasy needs to be turn-based or whether it needs to be action, and I'm just like,
they're missing the
I'm just like, I really can't care. I don't care. Like Final Fantasy to me is about the world and the story. It's not about the combat itself. Is just like so arbitrary to me. Like
totally, man. We said it earlier, right? But why is 10 so good? Because the narrative structure is insanely powerful. Why is 7? Why was, when we were whatever age, everybody's talking about FF7. People who don't even know what an RPG is were buying and playing FF7. It changed the world, like, because they were confused how somehow we're invested in these Lego characters. And we're like, oh, I need to know what happens to Cloud. I need to know what happens with Aerith. And it's crazy, man. And that's insane because it's a top-down view of Lego people, and you're literally invested in these characters. Like, what? That's how good the writing is. That's how good the story is. So
exactly. And I don't know. I'm not the combat going forward. I do think that they have something really fun going with 7R. I'm sure that 16 is going to be really amazing. So
yeah, I mean,
I'm excited.
Angle, man. Yeah. Ooh, that's juicy.
Yeah. I have no fears with what they're going to be doing with combat with the series going forward. Most of my fears are about the story. Even 15, honestly. 15's combat was not satisfactory for me. But even thinking back, if 15's story had been where I wanted it to be,
I was just gonna say it.
Yeah, I would
like versus 13. You know, where every part of the story, the anime didn't exist. All those flashbacks were in the game. How we met the boy, like you wouldn't even worry about it, man. You'd just be like loving. I would too.
Yeah,
the combat was all right. You know, like it's not bad, but compared to 7R, yeah, it's not there.
Someone asked, combat-wise, do you think the FF7 should take notes from 6 and have the final boss be fought by all party members instead of just 3? I'm sure that they'll have some kind of way of including everybody in the final fight.
You already did that in 7. You had to make
parties
against Bizarro Sephiroth. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, you're right. Yeah, you're right. When you have to do the two, when you fight Bizarro Sephiroth, I think they're more talking about like the safer Sephiroth fight, I think they mean more like like having everyone in there in one fight, and I think they've already kind of teased that would be what they would do, because I mean even in Remake, for example, they kind of like have everyone come together and fight.
I mean, look at that Sephiroth or the Whiskers battle at the end. You already have like you fight a section with 3 people, and then like Barrett shows up, and then depending on what choices you make, Tifa shows up. Like it's gonna be crazy. Picture weapon fights, because by the way, that's what that was when you fought the Whisper guy. He's a weapon. Yeah. Like you're gonna be fighting. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be like Godzilla movie. They're gonna be coming out of the water. You're gonna be in the airship dropping down with like paratroopers, Barrett or whatever. You're gonna have people in the water. It's gonna be insane. Kiputsu, I know you've asked this like several times, so I want to get around it. What are your takes on Final Fantasy 1? I've actually not played Final Fantasy 1, so I don't have a take. It's my first video game ever. Really? One of my favorite games ever. It is absolutely fantastic. Yes, do not play the remakes of it. I know it's gonna make you lose your mind. Me saying like, play the original. There's a Yoshitaka Amano style that is adapted. It's this dark, kind of like grim dark fantasy, kind of berserk looking drawing, like beautiful dark monsters against this black background, very gritty drawings and everything in the pixel art. And in the remakes, it's like cartoony, bright colors, like it totally loses it. The music. Sekito is the artist who redid the music. It really misses the mark, in my opinion. Go play the original. You will hear and you'll feel the original artwork. Check it out, man. Bro, check it out. If you feel that way about Final Fantasy 1, you absolutely need to drop everything you're doing and play Shadowbringers. Because you will be like, oh my god, this is like awesome. Especially patch 5.3 in particular. Chat already knows. You can mention it 5.3. Yeah, it must be crazy. Yeah. Well, basically, without spoiling what patch 5.3 is. Yeah. Patch 5.3 basically says, it basically asks, what is Final Fantasy and what's a Warrior of Light? Ooh, I like that. And when you get there, and the way PGT was like, don't spoil it for him. I'm not gonna spoil it for him, I promise. That's like the most vague way I could put it. But basically, if you're like an FF1 fan, it's basically like the ultimate payoff for anyone who is like an FF1 fan. I'm in, man. Yeah, I'm in. Also, this is a weird revelation that I had. FF1 villain. If some of these weird theories are right about 7R, they're literally taking the idea from FF1. about what Sephiroth's doing if the crazy ass theories are right about him like going back in time and stuff. So that's not like some. If that's true, it's not. It was in Final Fantasy.
Oh,
So keep that in mind.
that's interesting. Them basically saying that he's Garland, more or less.
Yeah, it could be like a Garland type thing.
Yeah.
Which, if executed, could be good. FF1 was great.
Yes,
everybody forgets that. I was like, holy shit, that was an FF1.
Yeah.
You just think it's like kind of a medieval fantasy. I mean, there's like a spaceship in that game too.
Yeah, Final Fantasy has always been like, nothing is like really off the table.
For sure.
Especially in like something like 14, where even despite the medieval setting, of course this is also true of FF4, but we're going to the moon.
Yeah, dude.
we don't need futuristic technology to space travel. We don't. We can just go to the moon and do whatever the hell we want.
I really recommend playing it, man, because you're gonna have such a fun time, like going back. And have you played 2, 3, 4? Like, what's the furthest back you've played?
The furthest back I played is actually 4. I have not played 1 through 3, and I have not played 5.
Okay, so I highly recommend 1 and 2. 3 I haven't finished myself. I'm kind of like saving it because I'm like, there's no more classic Final Fantasy. It's kind of freaking me out. But 1 you gotta play, especially 1, 2, 3. My friend BGG, fellow streamer, great guy, does the Final Fantasy Fiesta. Me and him talk about this. 3 is a surprising, because it never came to the West, we kind of forget about it. 3 is where like so much came from.
Bro,
like job
you need
system.
to play Shadowbringers. God. Okay, go on. You need to. You're gonna freak out at this stuff. I promise you. Go on.
14 addict. Nice guy. Trying to convince hater to play FF14. FF3, man, job system, summons in the way that we recognize, like Shiva and stuff, and those. So much comes from this game. So yeah, it's just gonna be a fun time for you as an FF fan to go back to FF1 and check it out.
So the reason I tell you that Shadowbringers, because Shadowbringers is all about FF3 homage. So that's why you've seen like the cinematic, right? Then that's why Eternal Wind plays, right? Well, cool. Yeah, it's all about the Crystal Tower. It's all about FF3 lore. So you'd freak out if you played that, because it just, oh man. And that's what I love about it too, is that like it's just like, what if we took all the lore from every Final Fantasies? What if we have the Crystal Tower and we have the live stream and with Gunblades? Yeah.
What 14 is doing?
Yeah.
Unless this man is insane and it's garbage. I don't think it is. You guys seem to love it too. I haven't played it. But what 14 is doing is proving execution, right? Because like a Final Fantasy like theme park, or it's just we'll just take shit from it. It's almost like FF9. Take shit from everything. Just throw it in there. It sounds like it could be actually kind of tacky and stuff, but they did it in a way that is well executed with a meaningful story and characters, not just like, oh, Chocobo, Moogle, cool. Like, no, they made it so it's cool. And it is possible to take these things which may sound on paper kind of weird, but execute them well. It sounds like 11 missed the mark on that, but 14 nailed it.
Yeah, I can't really comment in depth because I haven't played 11, but I can tell you that 11 is a lot harder to get into nowadays. But they still have a very, very, very loyal and very dedicated group of fans that are into 11.
I hear South America is like the hotspot of FF11 for whatever reason.
Really?
Yeah, like insane amount of people play it, and I don't know why.
God, you know what? That's
just like a community it grew, and then it stuck, and the other ones went away or something. I don't know, but
it's so weird that. But I can believe it for some reason. I can like really believe it.
Yeah, so you need to learn Spanish if you don't know it, and then play it. It'll be awesome.
All right, here's a good one. One last question from you two. How do you think the character Vincent will be handled in Remake, including Lucrezia will be handled? I think they're both not going to be handled as, I think you meant as well back in OG, much less in... Oh, I think they're not handled well back in OG, much less there's a Cerberus.
Yeah, so my thought is they're not handled in the original, so any handling would be good. Yeah. So we already have proof. Look what they're doing for Yuffie, right? I mean, it is just amazing. So I mean, Vincent is a fan favorite, man. They are going to treat him good. It's not going to be Dirge of Cerberus style storytelling, no matter what they do. So I wouldn't worry so much. You can tell they're already kind of like revising Dirge of Cerberus too, to make it probably better told. So I'm excited because Vincent and Yuffie, they're not even characters, man. They're just there. They don't even speak unless spoken to. Like, it's really weird.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
They're going to be handled a lot better. I almost wouldn't be surprised if they actually went ahead and did that that whole like Vincent is Sephiroth's dad thing. I kind of almost wouldn't be surprised if they actually did that. But I don't actually count on it. But I think that whatever they do with Vincent, again, I agree with you, is going to be better than how Vincent was handled in the game. Because like you said, there really was no handling of him because he was an optional character, and here he is definitely going to be a mandatory character. There's no doubt about it. They are going to go all out because they know how much people love Vincent. So yeah, I think that they are definitely going to take the Dirge lore. I think that whenever we see Vincent, I think Genesis will be the final boss of that game. I think that's how they're going to tie those two.
Somebody mentioned that too. It would be interesting because I mean,
Yuffie fighting Vice, right?
Yeah, he's in it, man. Like Genesis is going to be in this shit now. So.
Yeah, people, there's very mixed results whenever I ask, like, do you want to see Genesis in the game? I'll put a poll up, and it'll be like 50% yes, 50% no.
Yeah,
it's very divisive.
I hope he shows up for about 5 minutes, and he starts reciting like, "Infinite in mystery is the gift of the," and then Sephiroth just stabs him like, in the head and just throws him off a cliff. He's like, "I am so sorry for the interruption. Let's get back, Cloud. Please continue." And then, no, I'm kidding. I mean, I'm sure he'll be in it, and it'll be well told. You know, it's not going to be like gawked insert type thing anymore. Like, I guess the good thing to remember is they're taking it seriously, man. No matter what they do here, they're taking it serious. It's not Dirge of Cerberus, which was a very like fun sort of, hey Nomura, can you draw us a couple guys? Yeah. Cool, we're gonna run with this and just like make some crazy story, you know, about Vincent saving the world. So
we'll see Genesis. He will be a final boss for one of the games, but however they choose to present him is going to be a lot better than what you've seen of him so far.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that. And if I believe that, I think everyone else can definitely believe that. So
that's fun.
if they redesign his character, then it'd be I think the look of his character is fine. I mean, I assume you mean like his personality traits, and the way that they present him. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they will completely from the ground up retake how Genesis was.
Yeah, I think so. And it could be good. Again, I'm the first one to say, like, I know. Wow, Genesis in this game, believe me. But I think Crisis Core has a lot of weaknesses. I think it like there's a couple cool scenes in it, but for the most part, it's like very kind of retcon-y, strange, adding characters in, all that type of stuff. So I think they do it. But what excited me about Integrate is this. There's huge revelations from Integrate trailer, man. Like, it's not, now we know we're not getting like Dirge of Cerberus remake. The remake's not going to go into that and Advent Children and stuff. Like, it's implying that when the Fate was killed, like, you know, the Whispers were killed, it's not so much about like, actually now Aerith is gonna like, you know, just escape the planet and go like into space and stuff. It's not implying that. It's implying like, oh, they're gonna revise the whole compilation. Like, they're moving stuff around us, so it's one cohesive story. Like, it's not just gonna be, oh shit, Vincent doesn't even he's barely a character. Let's write his backstory 3 years later, but have it like, nah, it doesn't work, right? So it's like they're revising everything, so it's one cohesively told story that's gonna end at the timeline end of FF7, like where the meteor would have hit, but it's gonna actually finish. Everything's done. There's no more like deep ground 3 years from now, and so like they're already in it. And I think it's very interesting, like what that implies. And this is like getting into crazy, you know, big brain stuff like Sleep Easy's videos and everything. But I think it's all good.
I think it'll be interesting. I'll say it like that. I think the people who like that stuff will like more of it. That's my take on it. Someone asked, why is Genesis divisive? I never played Crisis Core, so I'm curious. Why do you think Genesis is divisive?
Genesis is divisive because he took one of the most beloved and probably the most like transformative characters in video game and narrative history, Sephiroth, who's like almost a household name at this point, and it took away from him in the way like it. Oh, in the Nibelheim flashback, Genesis was around the corner like, "What's up, guys?" Like, no, that didn't happen. Yeah. Right, so everybody knows that. So it took away a little bit from the Sephiroth charm, and this is the wrong way to do a backstory. Right, it's by trying to do stuff that takes away from the power of these characters. So like my thoughts is that in the remake, what they're doing with Sephiroth by bringing him in early, it's increasing Sephiroth's presence. I talk about Berserk a lot. I don't know if you're super into anime, Ryan. I think you are.
I am. But I haven't seen Berserk though, sadly. But I
got it. But I'll just say vaguely, not to spoil it. I wouldn't dream of spoiling anything, but is that early on you see this villain in the beginning, and then later, and then it goes back in time almost, and you're like, who is this guy? And then you realize there's a relationship between these characters. Like that's kind of what they did with Sephiroth. Like in Remake Part 1, you just see him. So from a new viewer's perspective, has no idea what's going on. They're just like, what happened between Cloud and Sephiroth? Are they friends? Like the way he's talking to him is very like almost intimate. What is going on here? I can't wait to see. So now when we get the Nibelheim flashback, it's increased the weight. It's not like, oh, that's Sephiroth the first time. It's, oh, yes, like I've been waiting for this shit for years. I get to know the Sephiroth flashback. Holy shit. This is crazy, right? So that's what it does. Genesis does the opposite. Genesis, like, he pulls away from that impact. Now, keep in mind, they can utilize him if executed right in a way that increases all the power of the story by adding more characters in a meaningful way. Kind of like with some of the side characters. Like, what's his name? The guy from Honeybee, who's awesome. What the hell's his name?
Andrea?
Just escaped me.
Andrea?
Yeah, Andrea. Amazing character. Awesome character. And it's like, I believe that guy would run the Honeybee Inn. Like, he's charismatic. He's a businessman. He's an artist. He's a dancer. Like, it makes sense. Yeah. He's a human character. He's awesome. And, like, I see him interact with Tifa. Oh, I would love to see you take the stage. It's like, that's awesome. Like, why wouldn't he say that? Like, oh, look at Tifa's muscles. Yeah, he'd be a good dancer. That's awesome. It makes sense. It's not like, ugh, Tifa would never say that. Like, no, Tifa would talk to him that way. So him and Cloud interacting, right? This awesome thing. Don't be afraid of your beauty, Cloud. Like, embrace it and everything. Cloud being kind of like, what do we do? It's awesome. Like, it makes sense, right? So that's what we want to see. We want to see meaningful inclusion of characters that increase the value of the overall story, give people that we can relate to, like Andrea. Genesis, not so relatable as a human side. He's a little too lofty in Crisis Core. He's like talking about he's speaking in theater lines, for God's sake, you know. So
I think that characters like Andrea or like Madame M, those feel like characters that mesh with FF7's world. And then I look at like Genesis and Angeal, and I'm just like, yeah, these aren't from the same continuity. whereas a lot of the new characters in yeah.
Because look at, like, it's like a novel FF7. Then you have Angeal, who's like, this guy is, I don't even know what they're calling. You can't even say like shonen. Like, I don't know what this dude is. He's just like a cardboard box. Like, honor, I have big sword. It's like, who is this guy? Like, you don't know anything about him. What the hell is this? Yeah, he talks really weird too, just like Genesis. Like, it's so it's too shallow. And then you have like Cloud, who we know so much about. It peered into his mind, for God's sake, and it doesn't make sense. So if they do Genesis in a way like, which by the way they're revising the whole story now. Like Intergrade shows us, it's going to be good. And I won't repeat the whole thing because I said it on the podcast the other day on Schrodinger's Baby Seal. My idea for a Sephiroth flashback is a random idea I had, talking about where the Masamune comes from, showing Sephiroth at the height of his power, showing him win the war and become the greatest hero and everything. That is a way to increase the value of Sephiroth, not like, you know, detract from him by making Genesis the spotlight and stuff. So I'm
completely agree.
Game. Yeah, the meaningful stuff.
All right, can we get 3 more thick questions?
Yeah, we want thick.
All right, I'm willing to take 3 more. Ask like your ultimate question.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Meteor.
And so, yes, absolutely. Um, someone says problem with Genesis isn't that he wasn't really a threatening crisis core. Don't even understand. He was the final boss because the game needed a final boss. That's why. And that's also that's
a villain.
Yeah, they needed a villain for it. And that's a big part of what's wrong with like prequels sometimes, is that sometimes you really can't make a prequel out of something without retconning something or making a new conflict that takes away from the original story's conflict. Prequel stories, not every story can have a prequel story. Not in a full-length film or game. Sometimes prequel, and that's why I think that prequels in general are kind of dangerous territory with storytelling, because a lot of times with prequels, like doing a full-fledged prequel, you do have to retcon a lot of things in order for that story to stand on its own. Because I always think if a prequel was meant to be the start of the story, then it would be the first chapter, the start of the story, right? If that was the best place to begin, right?
Absolutely. The issue is with outlining a story.
Yeah.
Right? If we go down to the structure, this is why 10 is great. Like, it's so clearly outlined. It makes perfect sense. This is why 10-2 is not so great because it doesn't do that. But like, I mention this all the time. Brandon Sanderson is like the outline master. It has to be outlined, Matt. You can't, if you outline it properly and say, oh, we're going to start here, but then go back and everything's planned completely, you can do it. You can pull it off. But if you're finishing a game, and like we said, almost in a Dirge Cerberus way, trying to tell Vincent's backstory because he has none in a 3 years later scenario, it just doesn't make any sense. It's awkward. Crisis Core, it's awkward, man, because it wasn't planned. So it has to be outlined. Now, keep in mind, if it's going to be done, like this is the ideal situation because we have Nomura, we have Kitase, we have the people who made these characters. So it's not like I mentioned Game of Thrones, I mentioned Star Wars, like a freaking script tag where somebody writes a script, gives it to somebody else, you finish the next part, which just is always a disaster. I think it's in the best hands it can be, for sure.
Who is your favorite Final Fantasy villain and why?
Oh God, you want to go first, or you want me to take it?
I'll go first because my explanation is to the point. It's definitely Emmett Selk from Shadowbringers.
I've heard his name a lot.
Yeah. He's very good. I don't want to spoil it for you, and I definitely don't want to spoil it for anyone in chat because I want everyone to play this. But I think when you defeat the villain and you're crying tears for him, you've done something really powerful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah. So that's how I feel about him. Who's your favorite?
I love it. I would say that's a tough call. I really love Adea in FF8, which you would argue maybe not the villain per se, like the villain, but I mean I love the Ultima-Chan Adea thing. I think it's super cool concept. And if they do a remake, like, and they treat it the same way as 7, even vaguely, like, oh man, that would be so awesome to see, like, fully kind of unpacked and played with. But I'm such an artist at heart, I guess, like the design of her and everything is so awesome. Like visually speaking, it's so striking. Similar to Sephiroth, right? This like very striking figure, imposing figure with like awesome abilities, really, really cool backstory and everything. It's just fascinating to me. So I would say, yeah, maybe Adea, maybe Sephiroth. Yeah, great villains. Arden is actually a great villain too, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Imagine if he had like his full exploration that was planned, you know?
So if you like Arden, you'll really like Emmett Selk.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because basically Emmett Selk more or less is like, what if we actually gave Arden and his backstory the screen time that it deserves?
That's awesome.
And that's basically what they did. Oh, and people now everyone wants to pile on the good ones.
We can speed run some too. Yeah,
okay.
Whatever.
What do you both think about Final Fantasy X-3?
Oh boy. So the problem is you guys made me read the audiobook on my stream with Crystal and I died inside. It was so weird. But I think that's a couple things. That was like, you could tell Nojima didn't want to do it. It's not even a real game, by the way. It's just like a little thing he wrote in 10 minutes. I don't really put much stock in it or thought it's not like gonna happen most likely. It was also received horribly. I don't think it's gonna exist. If it does, I'd much rather have an FF10 remake personally, which I know I get a lot of weird looks for that sometimes. I'd much rather have an FF10 look. I think it's also pretty likely because FF10 is a very popular game. Like it's sold very well for them, so a remake would sell incredibly. But yeah, I don't know. That's my that's my answer.
I do think they'll do a 10-3, but I also think that they probably won't follow the novel or the audio drama too closely. I think they'll take a lot of those ideas, like maybe like Arin's daughter, the girl who claims to be Arin's daughter, for example. I think they'll take stuff like that. I think that they will present those ideas differently than the way they were presented in the book.
Yeah.
Because I think that in the book and in the audio drama that they put on the remaster, I think that, there's no thing to it really. Those things were received like badly, like majorly badly. Yeah. But they have hinted that they strongly want to do 10-3. Nomina even putting out the concept art of what Tidus would look like if they did a Final Fantasy 10-3.
I was gonna say that was cool. Like he looked like Jack with the headband.
I loved it. I loved it.
That's awesome. Because I mean, Jack is one of the best. I mean, yeah. We love 10. We love 10, but
I don't know if there's a good way to honestly continue 10's story. I just felt like it was so conclusive. The first game, it was so conclusive. With 10-2, it feels so done. I don't know what else you can.
Yeah, so here's it's perfect what you say, because 10. The reason I love 10 and 7 so much is it's like confidence and storytelling. Man, like FF7 ends and like the screen flashes and you're like, are they dead? And then it's like 500 years later. It's like, wait. I actually don't know if they're dead, and that's the end of the game. Like, that's amazing, and it gets people talking about it, and it's confident, but it's quite ambiguous. Like, you have no idea what happened. 10 also has a super confident ending, man. That like, tragic ending, and it just ends, and you see Tidus. So that's amazing, but it doesn't have like all the characters you don't know what happened to. It shows Yuna and everybody in the arena at the end, like talking, right? It doesn't need that like redone conclusive ending. So I love stuff like that, and that's why I think 7 Remake is gonna like has more ground. 10 though, like it's done, right? It doesn't need this treatment. It doesn't need 10-2 or 3, for God's sake. You could explore that story more with a remake, but a prequel for 10 would actually be quite good, like the Braska journey. That's a rare example because that would add to FF10, whereas 10-2 like subtracts from FF10 like quite heavily, in fact.
And you know that 10-2 is really where they started to play around with that idea of what if we just undid death, and and that's really where that idea started, and it's just been going onward, and it was a thing, and 13 trilogy is really big on it, and
13's weird, with the second and third games.
Even in Kingdom Hearts, and so part of why I look at 7R and I'm like, nope, is because I see them kind of heading back toward that same trope again, where it's just like, well, if a character's popular enough in the sequel, we just won't kill him, or we'll unkill them, rather. And I really don't like that trope at all. I think that's probably one of the worst, because let's be frank, that is like an anime trope. That's one thing that happens in shonen anime all the time. It plagues so
DBZ, yeah.
Not just DBZ started it really, but it's even worse. At least in DBZ, there is an established universe reason. From the very start, this is like normal. Like the dragon exists, you make a wish, and it's established from the very beginning. And I guess that's why it's very easy to accept it with Dragon Ball, and that's why it's kind of like, okay, you don't really question it much. But after that, with a lot of other series that don't really have like an in-universe reason for characters to come back to life, or them to just not kill characters that should have died or would have enhanced the story for it to be better, a lot of it's just because once a character is a fan favorite, they just don't want to kill him. It's popular. A lot of it too is also because when those characters do become the fan favorite, the writers, the mangaka will even like receive like death threats and stuff because they kill.
I was gonna say,
yeah,
I know like Gohan in Dragon Ball Z, like when Gohan fights Cell and he planned on Goku to like go away.
Yeah,
I think he got so much hate that he's like, I guess I'll bring back Goku. Jesus, which I actually don't like that. I think he should have stuck to his guns. But yes, death threats are not good for anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they should have called. Maybe they call FF7 Part 2 like FF7 Revision, because that's I think I like the direction they're going. Right, so they're revising the story to try and make it better. So we'll see what happens.
All right. Oh, this is actually an interesting one. Who is your least favorite villain and why?
Oh God, I love Final Fantasy. So that's a hard question for me. Let me think. Like when I say like, oh, 13's weird and stuff, I just like it less than like the other ones. 13's still all right. Let me think though. Least favorite villain. You want to take this one first?
Yeah, because I already know.
Who are you thinking?
Orphan.
Oh yeah, you're thinking 13.
Orphan's just the worst.
I was gonna say that guy too. What's his name? Dynas Disley. What's his name? The guy who's like the Pope-looking guy from 13.
Oh, I can't remember his avatar name, but
Gallant Disley or something.
Gallant Disley. Yeah, then he turns into Barthandelus, right? And then Barthandelus and Orphan fuse.
It's definitely not strong, but that's still from the narrative structure. Like it was standing on like a what do you call it? A house of cards, that game. Like just the narrative wasn't that strong. So I would say that, or see, people are saying like Necron from 9, but you really can't call Necron a villain. Like he's the I don't know, opposite of Deus Ex Machina. I don't know what to call that. Bad guy who disappears out of nowhere for a fight at the end. Like, so I don't know, man. Yeah, I would say Kuja is actually a lot weaker than I remembered. I had a lot of problems with FF9 playing it again. People are gonna lambaste me for this, but it's got a lot of weird narrative stuff in it. It also has furries, so really.
Okay, maybe you shouldn't play 14, but that's okay. Cat boys, cat girls, and bunny girls don't count for furries. So. That's different. That's different.
Brand is a goddess. I have a figure over here. All right,
it's different.
By the way, have you guys read this? It's a great book.
Oh man, it's MJ Gallagher. That's my guy. That's my dude.
That's a good guy.
I've read part of it. I haven't had time to sit down and read all of it, but he's an amazing author, amazing guy. I just love listening to him. Nice, just listening to him talk is just great. Really kind-hearted guy too.
He's really.
I love MJ. She's amazing. All right, let's.
But yes, that's a tough question. I guess I'd probably say Orphan too, or
yeah. We need one big ass question to end this. So what's gonna be?
I got one for you, but that is like a concluding one if you want. For both of us.
Okay.
I'll say it as we're waiting for people to say theirs. Okay. So when we started this stream, we talked a lot about like we want like bold new direction for Final Fantasy, story driven, awesome stuff. What is something you want to see for Final Fantasy 17 or 18? Something we know like nothing about. And I'll just give you a little food for thought here. For example, I would love to see. I mentioned how much I love FF1. A Yoshitaka Amano designed modern Final Fantasy. If you guys have ever seen like Vampire Hunter D, have you seen it? It's by Amano as well. Bloodlust is called. This movie, it looks like a realistic looking Final Fantasy with Amano art. It's insanely good. I would love to see like a modern Final Fantasy with Amano art, and like Nobuo Uematsu on the score, like this classic take with modern graphics, and see like that aesthetic brought back in it's very similar to 14 aesthetic, like the Yoshida, I believe his name. Yeah, Naoki Yoshida, right? The artist. Yeah, I would love to see that sort of aesthetic, but this like weird Amano art, which is always not. It's kind of fantasy. It's kind of sci-fi, in the classic Final Fantasy way. So imagine that in like 2025 or something. FF17. So yeah, what about you, Ryan? What would you want to see? Like something crazy like that?
Wow, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. Oh man.
Bold new direction.
I have one thing that comes to mind. It's not bold at all. It's like probably the least bold thing that they could ever do. And it's not really that interesting, but it's something I want. I want them to just put a traditional overworld map back in the game. like a straight up, like a
no. You mean like chibi super deformed walking around the world map, or what do you mean?
Not necessarily chibi or super deformed.
Okay.
But generally speaking, in terms of the proportions, maybe deformed, like the same way where the camera is like way out, and you just see the character like walking across the world map. Yeah.
That's cool.
The reason is because I feel like whenever they do with them doing like with the 1-for-1 style, they have not been able to make Final Fantasy games feel the same size ever since that they started doing it. Final Fantasy games feel small, really small.
Yeah, even though they're bigger.
Yeah, even though they're bigger, they feel tremendously smaller because
I like that point.
Yeah, and because they haven't been able to, because the way the world map worked, the world map was a trick to make you believe you are really traveling the whole world by abridging
limitations.
Right. By basically, instead of doing 1-for-1, it was like 20-for-1 or 100-for-1. And you were able, and because of that, you were able to traverse the entire world and go anywhere, right? And it gave you this grand sense of freedom and dominion over the game world. And they just have not been able to achieve that ever since. And the reason they don't want to go back to that is because they feel like the 1-for-1 style is the AAA style. That's the future. People who aren't JRPG enthusiasts will look at the world map and be like, oh no, we can't. This is not appealing, right? And so they have to do things that are considered modern, which is the open world style. And I just think that the problem is that when you make those sorts of environments, you not only have to make the environments, you have to make all the environments that connect to the environments. and that's and so they spend time doing all that stuff within these open world games versus like an overworld map. You just kind of plop a city or plop that desert on there. And then you go from point to point to point, and in a way it's like a glorified like level select. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you have dominion over the world.
Yeah, I think the reason it feels like that is because like they're so clever about the vehicle progression too. Like you have this sense of becoming more grand. Like, oh, I'm walking around. Oh, I got a car like FF8. Oh, I got an airship. I can fly. I got a submarine, and it feels like you it keeps expanding, even though it's like so small if you think about it. Like, it's not that big, but it's a good feeling. So I think I like what he's saying. I think maybe like in the Breath of the Wild sort of way too. I think that's the perfect marriage. You got to play it, Ryan. You got to play it.
I will. I'm gonna play it before the sequel comes out. I promise you.
Yeah. Good. Then you won't have to wait. That's a great idea, actually.
I like Zelda sequels because the story in them is always interesting. Because they can't rehash the Ganondorf stuff. That's why Majora's Mask is my favorite. Because they had to do something like completely different. It was so weird.
It's a masterpiece. I love that game.
It is. It's one of my favorite games of all time.
No, like what a tone, what an atmosphere that game. Holy shit.
We got to take. What's up?
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, Breath of the Wild sort of way, right? Like, it doesn't have to be super realistic. It doesn't have to be. It's just got to be fun. It's just got to be enjoyable, and that's what the old games are. The world maps. Yeah.
I actually wish they'd move away from realism just a little bit. Maybe like 10 or 15%, if that makes sense. Just like a little bit. I just like just make it like a little less grounded. Okay, so we got a couple questions. I'm locking it in place. These are the last ones I take. I don't want this to go on forever. Even though I am enjoying my time, I don't want to take up all of Philip's time. So let's. All right. So can you tell me? This is from Solstice AR. Can you tell me one particular moment in any one FF that really sealed the deal, so to speak? Like a moment that after experiencing it, you just knew you were in the series for the long haul.
Oh man, there's so many. But for me, it's FF8 opening. It's literally won 1 million awards. It's insane. It's like a short film. FF10 Unisending. Like, come on, it's a masterpiece. Final Fantasy Versus 13 trailers. But one scene I can think of just comes to mind right away is the since we're on FF7. I mean, the Tifa like lovingly constructing Cloud's mind back together in the last. It's just like, it's a beautiful concept. It's so emotional. Like it's just that it left me speechless as a kid. Even though I was like, what's happening? It was just unbelievable, man. And I mean, there's so many moments like that, but those are the moments for me that separates Final Fantasy. It's, you know, Final Fantasy has the epic grand battles. It's got the crazy villains, the final battles, the action and the attacks and everything. But it's those human moments that always separates it. Man, like look at like Tales, or games that are like don't have enough budget, or you know, no knock on Tales. They're not trying to be like more sophisticated. They're trying to just have like a fun game, more shonen and stuff. But like, yeah, it's always been more human, and that's what separates like FF8. Those moments where it's just like Squall opening up after you got the payoff for like an entire game's worth of him being like in what's the word? It's escaping me. Wait, he doesn't talk to people. What's the word?
Introvert?
Yeah, introvert. Jesus, he's such an introvert, and you realize like why. You know, like, I just think he's a dick. It's the same with Cloud. You realize why. You're like, oh my god, it's so moving. The payoff, dick. The setup. That's exactly what it is. The setup and everything, and it's just so rewarding. And yeah, all those moments for me, man, where I was just like, something different about this franchise. There's something different about these games. It makes me want to talk to other people about it. It makes me think about my life. I see myself in the character. I always talk about Tifa. I relate to her so much as a character, like how kindness has been like a weakness for her a lot in her life. It's like hurt her actually, have her hurt other people. I don't get that in a lot of other video games. They're fun, but I don't get that level of like connection personally.
I agree. Well, there's someone asked, where do you think the next remake game will end? I'm just gonna actually say that where if you're thinking in terms of the original game story, I don't think it's gonna end there. I think that everyone's trying to predict, oh, it'll end, you know, Temple of the Ancients, Forgotten City, Crater. No. I think that it may be a location that we know, sure, but I don't think that any point in the current story that we're currently thinking of, we'll be able to point to that story event and say that, oh, that's where it'll end. I think that actually what's going to happen is that I think that's when we're gonna get the third Evangelion movie for Final Fantasy. that's what I think is gonna happen.
He's saying you don't understand. It's gonna end in like Genesis's bathroom after him, Sephiroth, and Vice have like an all-night bender.
Yeah, exactly.
And like wake up like hungover on Genesis bathroom. Like that was wild. Like it's gonna end like that. Like a weird place. We don't know.
Yeah, like when Shinji like woke up with like the eye patch.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's what it's gonna be like. Like we're gonna be like, wait a minute. What?
So
what?
Like,
yeah, we're gonna be like, what? And then that's how
crazy.
That's how it's gonna end. Because you could also argue that, you know, the Evangelion movies are also a remake sequel, and considering how much those developers take from Evangelion and how inspired from it they are, almost all of them said that was their most anticipated movie was the fourth Evangelion film, which actually really started the remake sequel trend in Japan. I think Digimon Adventure is getting a remake sequel. It's like a very popular idea right now in Japan. So I'm honestly not even surprised that they're doing this for FF7R in that sense. But what did you think? Did you have any more specific ideas on that?
For how the game ends, if we go by the original structure, I would say the best way to do it narratively speaking is, of course, end of disc 1, right? Empire Strikes Back. Holy shit, this is serious. What is even happening? Or of course, the Northern Crater. Just for the reason that, you know how we talked about in Act 1, like if it starts with a Nibelheim incorrect flashback, right, and then it ends at North Crater with the correct one, that's very nice bookend. Like that's very powerful. And just think about what it does for Cloud's identity. Think about what it does for Sephiroth. It's just clean. I don't know how they would make a game that big unless it's like 200 hours at this point, but we'll see.
I'm right there with you. What was it? There was another one here that was really good.
A lot.
Yeah, like man, I was like, man, everyone wants to save the good ones for like when you're trying to wrap things. Ryan, you mentioned that 5.3 was good enough to be a finale for the Final Fantasy series. I did, Philip. I'm telling you, 5.3 alone is so good. 5.3 is so good alone because it takes all of Final Fantasy and sort of like constructs it into like one conflict, if that makes sense. What would what would Remake have to end on to satisfy you in the same way? I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what it could do. I didn't even know that 5.3 could do that. I didn't even know that you could do that.
I mean, that's kind of what he said earlier, right? It's like he just can't picture it right now. Like it's really kind of rubbing him the wrong way. A lot of these themes. It's not that he thinks it's actually 100% impossible. It's just that he like can't picture it. He doesn't really like where it's going. He has a reason to be spooked out. Mm-hmm. You know, it's understandable. It's understandable. I think, I don't know if I have the version of that answer to that question because I like it, but I think even for me, man, I'm holding it to a high ass level. I think if they stick to the same level they're at and don't go crazy with like changing stuff at a not well executed rate, then we're good.
Awesome. Okay, what should be the final one?
Oh man, that's a tough one.
The final question for Final Fantasy. Let me see. There's a couple of other good ones in there. And we will rate Sleep Easy, by the way. I have a question. Well, I felt there was another one before I would take that one because that one's just okay. I think we'll go with that one then.
What do we got?
We'll just wait. Oh
no.
we'll go with this one. What you two thought of what did you think of the connection between the Final Fantasy X and 7 universe?
So this is fun. Is pretty much the answer here, right? Because it's not something that was planned. We talked about story outline earlier. That's why I always talk about Brandon Sanderson. Like, taught me so much about outlining stories. It's not planned, right? So this is why I talk about Stormlight Archive. Ryan, definitely read this if you haven't. It's mind blowing. It's another reason I have faith in 7 Remake. Like some of these ideas, it's like if you imagine if every Final Fantasy was planned to be super interconnected from stage 1, like 1 through 16. And yeah, there's Leah in the chat. My girlfriend, like, we love Stormlight. But like, imagine every single Final Fantasy was planned. And every character like eventually came into contact, but it wasn't some like Kingdom Hearts Dissidia nonsense where it's like, okay, they like found a portal or something. Like, imagine if it was all planned and then one day you were like, wait a second, that almost sounds like it's something to do with Squall. Hold on a second, I go back to FF8 and then you're like, holy shit, there's a hint. Wait, what? And it like opens up like that. So yeah, imagine that level of planning. That's not what that is. That's not what that is. It's just like a fun thing. I think it's just Easter eggs and everything. I mean, what do you think, man?
No, I completely agree. They're never like really gonna go into it. I do agree with what you're saying that you do have to have some sort of vague plan for that. One of the things that again is so amazing about Final Fantasy 14 is that almost 10 years of storytelling here. And most of it was planned from the beginning. They had a great, at least an outline of how this would all go. And even as far as Shadowbringers, Realm Reborn came out in 2013. They have payoffs coming off from a story that happened like 6 years later. They had planned that far in advance. And, one of the ways they do that is that they already have like a very firm idea of what they'll be doing 2 expansions ahead of time. So you meet the Warriors of Darkness in like Heavensward, like post Heavensward. That's like in 2015 they were setting up stuff that was going to happen after Stormblood in Shadowbringers.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's
and
what
so
I like to see.
right.
And I know that's true because in my analysis of the Endwalker trailer on YouTube, I got a ton of comments. People were like, "Yeah, that's what's his name, Gratia." Is that how you say his name?
Right.
Like he was back then. And I was like, "Holy shit!" I think I actually remember that guy because I did play a bit back then, and all these cool things where it's like, oh yeah, they actually were playing. Like it has this interconnectivity to it where it's not just like, oh, by the way, you're on a new planet now or something like crazy out of nowhere. And this is why 13 is bad. Like we said, it's 10-2 versus 10. It's tonal shift. Like 10-2 is it's a totally different feeling than 10, and that's why it kind of fails, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a fun thing. Like there's nothing wrong with that too. Like it's just that like if you look at in the Shinra tower at the end, it's like, oh, that's a picture of Shinra from 10. That's cool.
Yeah. I think it's just a cheeky reference. I don't think it'll ever amount to tremendously more than that. I think I would feel weird. Yeah.
BGG, like he's another story, like he's super like against that thing. He's like, it's really dumb. And I'm like, yeah, actually, like Seymour rode with Wedge, like they rode Sin to Midgar, and then like they picked up Sephiroth and Genova, and they went back and it's like trying to come up with some shit, but it's always goofy, you know.
Yeah, there's and that's the problem is that there is no way to connect that realistically without it being goofy. I love it as a meme though. I hope they I hope they continue to insert that as a meme with the future remake games. I hope they can yeah, I wanted to be like one of those things that is kind of there, but they never actually talk about it. They just put it there to drive you fucking nuts.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah. as long as it's fun. Yeah. I mean, or if they want to do it, you know, just make it good, right? Just make it good if they're gonna do some shit with it. But I don't know how close we are to wrapping.
Okay, we are wrapping up right now. As a matter of fact, I already typed the raid command.
Okay. Let me just say thanks then.
Yeah. Dude. Thank you so much for coming on. I'd love to have you back on soon.
Same, dude.
I'm next time I have you on though, you're gonna be talking to me about how great of an experience you had with Shadowbringers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking. Bro, you got 6 months. You got almost exactly 6 months from today.
Oh, until the new one, yeah.
The story, including if you start from Realm Reborn, story is it's gonna take you about 160 hours. Each one is about a 40-hour story.
Okay, if you give 7 a chance, I give 14 a chance.
Deal. I'm gonna play all of it, dude. I'm gonna play all of it. I'm gonna play Ever Crisis. I'm gonna play the first Soldier even. I'm gonna play Part 2. I'll play Integrate. I'll play it when it comes to PC though. I just can't justify spending $500 for what is probably gonna be a 3 or 4 hour DLC. I'm gonna play all of it. In fact, I will still stream. I'll even stream myself playing the games, because I know people will want to tune in and watch, and they're gonna be like, he's gonna say something negative. It'll be a no commentary stream the whole time.
I'll come to your house and beat your ass.
The whole time.
Beat your ass personally if you say some negative stuff to him. So keep that in mind. Watch your back out there. But no, thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If you guys want to find me ever, I got my YouTube channels, Instagram. Same name as here. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, don't be negative about stuff, man. People are open to their opinions, or have the right to their opinions. Don't be rude, or I will personally beat your ass with a Tifa combo. Got it?
All right. And if you're watching this on YouTube later, I'm pretty sure this will make its way to YouTube whenever I have time to edit everything. But if you're watching this on YouTube, the links to all of Philip's social media will be in the description below.